platform. And I want to assume that all committee members who were with us yesterday are still present, and that other honorable members who were unable to be with us will be joining us or have joined us from both committees. I hope that the Ministry of Education, as they were with us yesterday, they are still present. That's what I want to believe, and I'll appreciate that because they know the role that they have to play is very huge. Honorable members, I'm not going to go back to clarifying the purpose and also indicating why we have this meeting, where do we derive the mandate from. Just to say that this mandate, this meeting is informed, or the mandate is derived from the Money Bills and Related Matters Act of 2009, as amended in 2018, and also the Public Finance Management Act. Yesterday, honorable members, we had presentations from Treasury, Department of Basic Education. We had a presentation from FFC, PBO, Eastern Cape, and Free State. So we'll continue today with the Department of Education from Gauteng. And before I do that, I will request the Secretariat for both committees. For those who were not here yesterday, the invitation is by two committees. So we're having these meetings together, which is led by myself, a chairperson for appropriation, and Honorable Nchabeling for education, sports, arts. It's a very long name. I think you'll speak to that. Before I do that, can I request Honorable Nchabeling, the chairperson, the co-chairperson, to greet the members and welcome them? Honorable Nchabeling.
Thanks, Chairperson, and let me greet all the members on the platform, the MECs present, and the Director Generals of the department in the provinces. Our mission today, as you know, is to look at the performance of our budgets on children with learning difficulties, and of course the program on AIDS and HIV awareness. That there'd been lots of underspending in this area, and this is a very important area for us. So what we want to hear from you today is, was the budget used for what it was intended for? In those words, let us be focused and not deal with side issues. It's so unfortunate for those who were not here yesterday that they've actually missed out quite a lot. Yeah, thanks, Chairperson. You are muted, Chair.
Thank you, Co-Chairperson Nchabeling. Can we check with the Secretariat in terms of the apologies? Lubabalo and your colleague.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, from the committee, we have an apology from Honorable Moletsane, Chair. Also, the apologies from Honorable Tutoit and Honorable Njado. They are traveling, Chairperson, but they are going to join the meeting. Honorable Don is in the platform already. Honorable Njatu is going to join earlier on, but because they are traveling, they might have connectivity issues, Chair. So they indicated that I must table that apology to yourself regarding them. Honorable Mama Rahane is going to join the meeting. However, at 10 o'clock, she's going to log out and go and attend to another meeting. With respect to MEC's chair, as I indicated earlier on, there are MECs who are present. I'm sure they will introduce themselves when you give them that platform. However, there is an apology from MEC Motsimela from Northwest. MEC is unable to join the meeting, Chairperson. Regarding the colleagues, there is an apology from Ms. Harangwe, Chief Director from National Treasury. She won't be able to join the meeting. However, Mr. Pillay is in the platform together with the team National Treasury. From our side, those are the apologies, Chair. Thank you so much. Noltando can come through you, Chairperson.
Nolitando?
Good morning again, Chair. Good morning to the honorable members, honorable MECs, and everyone present in the meeting. Chair, on the side of the Select Committee, I've got the Chairperson, Honorable Chabeleng, Honorable Ndongeni, Honorable Christians, and Honorable Maleka. I've got an apology from Honorable Gillion. She will be attending her brother's memorial service today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, colleagues. Doctor, you wanted to say something on this item?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairperson, for allowing me to do that at this moment. I'm just tendering an apology from the Honorable Mshengu, the MEC for KwaZulu-Natal, who is held up in the legislature. He requested me as the head of department to represent the province. If the chairperson can allow me to lead the team from the KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you.
That's the Department of Education.
Yes, the Department of Education, KwaZulu-Natal.
Okay, thank you, HOD. Lastly, can I request that members, as you speak, please open your videos, or you can keep them open if your network allows that. But we really want to request that we open our videos as we speak. There has been a standing request from communications in Parliament. This is for the reasons that we are here to speak to the public, to the country, and we are accounting to them. So they will also want to see that. I'm not sure if it's live, but even if it's not live, it's recorded and it will be shown later as per their schedule. Allow me to step to the first real item of the day. Yes. Oh,
no, Limpopo. Is there anyone from Limpopo? Because yesterday the MEC said she may not be in the meeting today.
And the HOD, Limpopo has got problems.
Yes, Chairperson.
Who's saying yes, Chairperson? Can we see you and introduce yourself, sir?
Chairperson, my name is Matthew Mhlongo. I am the Acting Deputy Director General. Yesterday, Chair, you will remember that the MEC indicated other engagements that they have. There's a probability that she can join anytime as soon as they finish. Our HOD has bereavement. That is why she could not be here. I will be in the meeting with Dr. Mphahlele. The two of us are going to be presenting. Thank you, Chair.
I don't know if you were present, Ntate Mhlongo, yesterday, but I really expected the MEC to be part of the meeting today. She did apologize for yesterday. If possible, please ask her to join us, because we have realized that there are serious problems in Limpopo, and we want to assist in terms of attending to those problems, and expect you to address the concerns from the members. Thank you for that. Keep on trying and convey the message that we really would love to have her. And okay, the HOD, I understand the bereavement, that they can join the meeting. Okay. The first
Honorable Chairperson.
Oh God, who's that?
Honorable Chair, I'm sorry, Chair. I did have my hand up. Sorry, Chair, to interrupt you.
Okay.
It's a HOD for education in the Northern Cape, Honorable Chairperson. We were in the meeting yesterday, myself and the MEC, but he has also asked me if I could please just tender an apology for him for today. We have a social cluster meeting of the Executive Council, and the MEC has to present at the meeting. So I was also supposed to be at that meeting, but then we agreed that I must represent him here, and then he will take the cluster meeting on that side. Sorry about that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can we allow MEC Lesufi from Gauteng to present, to give us a presentation? Lubabalo, I hope you have the presentation. You can flag it on the screen.
Yeah. While they're still flagging it, Chair, let me also greet you and the co-chair, and also record chair, if you don't mind. Yes. Around 11 o'clock, I had to log out for a very urgent meeting that I tried to postpone, but I couldn't. After that meeting, I'll rejoin the session if you're still on after 11 o'clock. My sincere apologies for that, Chair.
Okay. Who are you going to leave? Is the HOD in?
Yes, I've got an acting HOD, Albert Cheney. Our HOD has bereavement. Yesterday, he was burying somebody. Oh, you joined the HOD? HOD?
Yes, I joined the meeting.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks
I have
for that.
joined today.
Oh, thank you so much, HOD. Truly appreciate that. Our HOD is here, and I really want to appreciate that, because it bereavement yesterday. So for him to be here, I truly appreciate that. Chair, let me start by thanking you.
Our condolences to all the members and their families. Hey, it's tough.
Thank you. It's tough and difficult, Chair. It's tough and difficult.
Yeah, you can understand.
Let me start by thanking you, Chair, the co-chair, for this opportunity for Gauteng to come here and share information with you. We also want to appreciate all the members of the joint committees, so that we can provide the relevant information. And let me also acknowledge all the MECs that are on this platform, the HODs and support staff. We truly appreciate that as Gauteng. I'm going to allow the HOD to lead on the presentation, Chair, if you don't mind. And I will come later at the end just to contextualize some of the issues that have been flagged by the administrative staff. HOD?
HOD?
Thank you very much, MEC, Honorable. Thanks, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable MECs, Honorable members that are on the call, my colleagues. We are presenting on the recommendation, or rather the instruction of the committee on the two grants, the HIV and AIDS Life Skills Education Grant, as well as the Lspid Grant. On the slide that we show here, Chair, is that, and this is for the 2020-2021 financial year, we demonstrate that Gauteng had spent 94.2% of the grant, and there are the different areas under which the grant had allocated funding. And you will see that of the subcategories that were allocated, it is the advocacy component that suffered at 78.6%. However, the other areas in terms of AIDS project and IP in the primary schools, the health and wellness, as well as the LSM, were able to demonstrate up to 99%, and with the teacher development showing up to 100%. Monitoring and evaluation only could address reach 82%. You will see part of what we had allocated to the secondary schools, the 1.3 million, we had to regionalize, and ultimately our and youth or peer development was at 98.8. So our total annual spend was at 94.2%. If you could go to the next slide, Babalo. On this slide, we begin to show the areas where and this is just about a high level presentation on what the grant has been used for and what we have been able to use. You will see that as it relates to the HIV AIDS Rollout Summit with learners, because of the COVID pandemic and the lockdown rather during that period, this the summit could not take place because of restrictions in terms of COVID-19. Instead, we had online sessions with partners to strengthen the support for vulnerable learners and children during the lockdown. And in this particular case, we give an indication of how the online system would have worked. And secondly, you would also note that an area that we could not do work on was the SGB training, because we could not reach the SGB at that point. However, from an online training of educators, we were able to achieve 834 of educators that had been targeted and SMTs to have been trained. And equally, we give a sense of the first aid training that had to be done. And clearly, this is just but an indication of the areas that we had been looking at. We can move on to the next slide. On this slide, we further go to show the other areas. We had planned that there would be an advocacy where we would be reaching close to 10,000 learners and community members in respect of advocacy. However, as we know, we could not necessarily convene physical meetings in this particular regard. And in that way, we were unable to reach everybody that we had targeted, although the program was able to get to a point where we were able to share the DBE standard operating procedures, where we had started in the Citibank district of the province. What we did do, however, and this is an area that we were able to accelerate on, was on the procurement of CAPS and COVID-19 compliant materials for LSN learners, and we give an indication of the number of materials that we were able to procure: 3,300 materials on TB and other areas of HIV, 49,500 materials on Braille were distributed to LSN schools, 5,000 posters on HIV, TB, and related life skills program were distributed, and further to mitigate and support the issues in relation to HIV and TB, we also had the 10,000 guideline handbooks that were also distributed to learners in the province. We can move on to the next slide. Next slide, Babalo. Clearly, with the 94%, which is not, which clearly would be that there was about 5% that we could not spend. There were challenges that we experienced with the HIV/AIDS grant at the beginning of in the 2020-2021 financial year. Although the budget utilization started on a slow scale, and it was more because there were restrictions on gatherings, workshops, and training. We then had to resort to online training, and therefore we on the basis of that, we were able then to recover. But clearly we wanted to indicate here that at the beginning, there were challenges as a result of the hard lockdown and the inability to congregate. However, we replanned and therefore started to deal with issues of online training. But secondly, a major challenge that we faced was that we were then, as a result of learning losses that were happening from a curriculum point of view, all other teaching, all other times that had been scheduled to conduct summits and related when schools reopened could not be used, and therefore it also affected the extent to which we were able to reach everybody else. If we move on to the next slide. But there were mitigation factors, mitigation areas that we then implemented in this particular regard. To address the slow expenditure, we were then able to focus on those aspects of the grant that did not require congregation of masses. And this included having to do environments to procure LTSM, and I have spoken about that. We have procured the different guidelines. We further expanded the Learner Support Agents Program. The Learner Agent Support Program, that's where we get out of school youth, placing them at the school, paying them a monthly stipend, and those young people providing the psychosocial support to vulnerable learners. That we were able to do, and we will give an indication. The LSA, as we call them, assisted the department because they were already in place, and therefore we could give necessary support for learners. As we all know, that COVID challenges had actually gotten to a point where it was beginning to have psychosocial effects on many young people. If we move on to the next slide, the question is, if that was the aspect of expenditure, how far have we come? In terms of second quarter for this year, we can confirm, Chairperson and honorable members, that our expenditure for the second quarter as of to date, it was standing at 42% of expenditure, and the performance is in relation to those aspects that are indicated. 430 LSAs contracted and are currently in schools. They have been inducted to support OVCs in schools. We have 500 educators that have been selected to be trained on comprehensive sexuality education, and we give a sense of when that training will be taking place. So you will see that over and above the 42% that we have already committed, we are already also showing a plan of how we will be moving into the third quarter. Ongoing support on issues of COVID-19, HIV AIDS, HIV and TB are being supported, as well as other activities that will follow as restrictions are eased on an ongoing basis. So to the extent that there are conditions that are placed by restrictions, we continue to look into these matters. That is as far as the HIV AIDS grant is concerned. We can move on to the Lsipd grant. If we move on to the next slide, please. If we move on to this slide, it begins to show, and here we just confirm what the business plan framework that we received from National as it responds to the court order relating to the WCFID would indicate. And in this regard, we show how Gauteng then responded to those areas that were in the court order, that we distributed those funds as per the percentages indicated: 5% for training of teachers, therapists, officials, and caregivers, 18% for LTSM, classroom furniture, equipment for special care and designated schools to benefit learners, and 65% for compensation of transversal, itinerant outreach team members and provincial manager, and the 12% for the administration, including travel, vehicles, accommodation, and subsistence. If we move on to the next slide, on the next slide, this is what then the actual expenditure for 2020-2021 was on this grant. And you will see, compared to the HIV and AIDS grant, it would seem that we were at 83.6%, which is a little lower. However, on the next slide, we begin to indicate what the causes of those challenges would be, and we will talk to them. However, we thought before we even deal with that, we give an indication, Honorable Chairperson and members, on the achievements that were reached in respect of this grant during the period under review. As it relates to human resources specific to inclusive education, we indicate that we had a grant manager who was appointed, but the grant manager retired on the 28th of February 2021, and we can indicate that the post had been advertised and shortlisting and interviews planned for August 2022. As it relates to the appointment of other itinerary or transversal itinerant team members, 32 of them, we actually have 27 currently in place. As it relates to the balance of that, we indicate why not 32. We had one speech therapist terminating as a result of death in November 2020. We had a speech therapist resigning on the 31st of December last year. An occupational therapist who was a foreigner was terminated on the 31st of December again because of work permit had expired, and an educational psychologist who accepted a post as an educational psychologist in a district outside the confines or the framework of the Lspid grant. But we can confirm, Chair, that all of these posts have now been advertised and will be completed by August 21. As it relates to the other areas, disaggregation of the selected schools and special care centers, we give you a sense of the number of special care centers that are implementing the learning programs. 61 was the target. 60 is actually what is currently achieving. The reason for the variance is because there's one center that closed in November 2020 rather than 2021. The number of caregivers, we give an indication, and this the learner numbers declined in our SCCs, with the result that given the ratio that there is, therefore the number of caregivers was also decreased, and as a result we had that the variance. If you could move on to the next slide. On the slide, we then show the number of learners that are in SCCs. 1,500 was the target, but we actually achieved 1,606. There were no variance there. In respect of the numbers making use of the learning programs, 1,300 was the target, and we had the 903 PID. And this was more of the impact, the negative impact of COVID on the number of learners implementing the program. And similarly, the number of learners in special schools making use of the learning programs, we had 200 as a target, but only 102. And here we give an indication that more than 102 learners access the learning programs. However, psychosocial assessments were not concluded by the end of 2021 to confirm the PID diagnosis in this particular regard, but it's an area that we're looking at. We can move on to the next slides. In the next slide, we show the distribution or provision of PPEs to the sites, and we give an indication that there were no deviations, and we show what were the provisions of the PPEs to mitigate the issues in relation to COVID. In the same way, on the provision of ICT in the schools, in the sites, 60, and we show that there were no deviations, so we were able to account for all of that. In the next slide, we then summarize the challenges that led to the current expenditure. Under expenditure, as I would have spoken to, that as in total, the 6 posts were vacated, 1 due to retirement, 4 to cancellations of contract, 1 due to death. And therefore, these posts could not be filled immediately, with the result that whatever funding that was allocated to them and not utilized, the balance of that then contributed to the under expenditure. However, as we indicated, interviews are scheduled for August and September for finalization of the process. National training, equally, that was supposed to have taken place, where GDE had to save money or allocate money for people for accommodation, did not materialize, and both these 2 aspects contributed to the issues in relation to our inability then to participate or to show 100% spend, Chairperson. as part of remediation, we have indicated that the posts have been advertised. We can move on to the next slide. We also want to show what progress we have made to date as it relates to this grant. Expenditure to date on the grant is standing at 48%, or in terms numeric money value is 16 million already. Of that has already been spent as to date Q2, and clearly we are on track to be spending the performance. How we're going to be dealing with that is in relation to the filling of vacancies. We can confirm that the orders for the 2022 academic year have been completed as it relates to the learner support material, the booklets, the psychometric assessment, resource packs, and psychometric kits. So all of these activities are already taken care of, and we can confirm on the next slide. This is just to give you a sense that 95, when we say there's been committed, is because 95% of RLSO ones, and these are RLSO ones would be what we use to make commitments and to acquire services, have been submitted, and all that we are waiting for is for the delivery of that which has been procured to be delivered, and we will be able to pay. And secondly, the training of caregivers on feeding techniques is also taking place in respect of that. Chair, the last thing that we want to say is that we are also anticipating that there could potentially be an underspend on the current vacant post, and we are only talking for the period when there were no people in the post, because remember the allocation is for the whole year, but because we know that from April to September there would not have been people in those posts, we made a projection that about 1.3 million may lead to underspending, and therefore we requested a deviation from DBE in respect of this aspect from compensation, so that we can add on to LTSM, which will then allow us to be completely spent. Finally, Chair, as in terms of our overall remarks, what we can confirm that in Gauteng, as a matter of fact, and the Lspid program has performed well over the years, always achieving close to 100% expenditure in the previous period. However, in 2020-21, the under expenditure that was noted was as a result of the impact of COVID and the lockdowns that we experienced, more contributed by the 6 posts that were vacated and could not be filled immediately. But as we had indicated, these have been advertised and shortlisting taking place. And this is our submission, Chair, to the committee. We submit and request that the committee takes note of our report and receive it. Thank you very much. Thanks, MEC.
Thanks, HOD. Thanks, Chair and Co-Chair. You can see from the presentation of the HOD, indeed it was an appeal. We tried under the circumstances, and our major weaknesses or limitation was to manage or run some of the programs around the matter of lockdown, staff movement, and COVID challenges. But we've learned from those limitations. I remain hopeful as we progress into the next round, we'll be in a position to respond positively and report positively on some of these issues. Thank you so much, Chair. Can I hand over back to you?
Thank you. Thank you very much, HOD and Honorable Minister. Honorable MEC. Hey, it will be trending. I hope it does. Thank you so much for the presentation. Can we step to the next presentation? That is the report from KZN, Department of Education.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me greet the honorable members in the meeting, including the MECs for provinces, and also greet the officials from the Gauteng, and KwaZulu-Natal and other present provinces. We will provide a presentation that covers both the grants. We're starting with the HIV and AIDS Life Skill Education Conditional Grant. Next slide. Now, here, Chairperson, we are actually saying that KwaZulu-Natal find the grant to be fit for purpose because we have quite a number of people, thousands, who are actually affected by HIV, AIDS, and tuberculosis and SITs. And one of the approaches in KwaZulu-Natal is that we believe in prevention, and this links well with one of the goals of the grant, which is to contribute to the prevention of new HIV, SHI, and COVID-19 infections. For the province, one of the most important impact drivers is access to sexual and productive health services. Therefore, the grant fits very well because it seeks to increase access of KwaZulu-Natal to sexual and productive health services. Next slide. Well, of course, we anticipate, as I'm going to present, it's going to be clear that the grant is expected to help KwaZulu-Natal to contribute to the support of South Africa's efforts to prevent these diseases, and also anticipation that KwaZulu-Natal, as it views the availability of the grant as critical because it purports to provide comprehensive sexuality education that we need so much. And also the Department of Education is a labor-intensive sector, and therefore the grant has a very big potential to play a role by providing employees with health and wellness programs for educators. And the conditions of the grant are designed to mitigate the impact of HIV, TB, SITs, and COVID-19 by providing caring, supportive, and enabling environment. And this is important for the workforce in the province. And the province takes the grant as a necessity, as it has a huge potential to reduce vulnerability of children to HIV, TB, STI, and COVID-19. This is very important, especially because it promotes a sharp focus on the orphaned children and girls. Next slide. In terms of allocation, the province noted that the amount of money given to us changed. Originally, we had 62.4 million, and the allocation then changed as it was reduced by 15 million up to 47%. Whilst the reductions are accepted as a way of dealing with financial conditions in our country and the sector in particular, it is clear that the cut will affect the spin-offs that I've actually outlined in the first two slides. Next slide. Here we're showing that the grant or the amount of money we have, which is 47 million, 63.2% is used or has been utilized at district level and 36.8% at provincial level, meaning that at the level of enabling spending and service delivery at provincial level, we spent 36.8% and the other 63.2% at district level, where the tire hits the gravel. Next slide. Here we show the allocation of expenditure, where we give the total allocated per district, the total spent, and the percentage spent. And we want to say, Chairperson and honorable members, that we were able to spend 100% of the grant. Next slide. In terms of payment schedules and transfers per quarter, we transferred in April, we transferred 13%, and in July, we transferred 40%, and October, 33% was transferred, and in January 2021, I'm making a mistake there, it's 14%, which makes it 100%. Next slide. The expenditure 2020 to 2021, the province had an allocation of that amount, 47 million, and the province and the 12 districts were able to spend all the allocated funds during the 2021 financial year. Therefore, there was no under expenditure and over expenditure during this financial year in KwaZulu-Natal, and expenditure was 100%, during the 2020-2021 financial year. Next slide. Per quarter, we decided to disaggregate the expenditure per quarter in terms of what we projected to spend and what we spent. For instance, in the first quarter, we projected 11 million and we went down to 7. In the next quarter, 23, and we were able to spend 23. And then third quarter is 35, but 33. And then last quarter, we ended up with the whole amount that was allocated to us. That was just to disaggregate. Next slide. In fact, we're still saying the same thing, expenditure per quarter, but we're showing it graphically so that you, honorable members, can see that in quarter one, we spent, our actual expenditure was lower than the predicted, and in quarter three, it was the same thing. And the line graph here shows consistency that the projected and the actual seem to be actually on the same horizontal vertical line, which actually says that we're not far from the projected to the actual. Next slide. In terms of the accumulative expenditure percentage, our expenditure was accumulative in a sense that quarter one, 15%, quarter two, accumulatively, we're able to be at 49. Quarter three, accumulatively, we're able to be at 70%. And then quarter three, accumulatively, quarter four, as accumulating, as it has been accumulating numerically, we got to 100%. Next slide. We just want to say here, the expenditure for the second, third, and fourth quarters were related to the following awareness, training and development, purchase of PPEs to track the content of the expenditure so that we look at that qualitatively, not only quantitatively in terms of figures. Next slide. Expenditure per key area as at 31 March 2021. We're showing that the key area, first key area is COVID-19, how much was spent, advocacy, training, peer education, care and support, learner support and learning and teaching and support material, monitoring and support. Until then, we get to the 47 million that is projected there as a way of being accountable to the honorable members as to how the money was spent. Next slide. Chairperson, here we're showing performance information as at 31st March. I'm not going to read all of that, but we're showing the key performance areas, the outcome indicators, as it were, the outputs, the number of targeted 2019-2020, and then the number of schools, learners, educators in April, and then the cumulative targets since quarter one. And now, the next slide. In fact, we're doing this. Go to the next slide as well. The next slide. So in all these slides, we're indicating these things so that we show where we were as at March 31, 2021. Next slide. Chairperson, we're presenting the challenges and interventions not necessarily because we are making them an excuse, but we are raising them because they were actually included in the brief that we must talk about challenges and mitigations. Budget reductions definitely had that kind of an impact as a challenge, but we were able to mitigate by revising the budget plan, and cost-cutting measures were implemented to achieve set targets with the budget. In the other activities, targets were reduced in consultation with the Department of Basic Education. Next slide. Also, the lockdown-related difficulties to implement activities is an obvious one in all provinces, but once schools were open, we made use of weekends and school holidays to make up for the lost time and during school closure, wherever it was possible, Chairperson. Next slide. In terms of the difficulty in implementing activities in the business plan that needed, the gathering of learners in trying to comply with COVID-19 regulations, that became a challenge and a reality and a necessity for us to save lives. But as gathering of learners and educators to a common venue could not be done, on-site individual school support sessions were conducted, ensuring that schools receive necessary interventions. Next slide. The budget allocation and expenditure by 31 June, we're talking about the current year, we're showing that the budget of 61 million, we have already spent 13 million, committed 1 million, spent and committed is 15 million, so we are at 25% as of now. Next slide. Also, we're showing the current year, what we have allocated and what we have spent and the percentage and what we have committed and the total spent and the percentage, just to demonstrate that we are on track in as far as trying to spend also in this financial year. Next slide. Quarter one performance as per 30 June, we're showing the activities or what we did, the annual targets, what is achieved and so on. I'm not going to read it number by number or word by word, except that we have advocacy and social mobilization, training, capacitation of school governing bodies, and co-curricular activities. Next slide. Also, we still...
Dr. Mtembu, get daughter. Please.
Okay. So we're still articulating the same chairperson, and I think we're showing the same thing about the current one, because we did not want to dwell to the previous one only. Next slide. Then we get to the next grant, where we're talking about these learners, and here we just want to start with the magnitude of the task. KwaZulu-Natal has 11,041 learners who fall under this category. There are 788 learners in special care centers. There are 353 learners in special schools. There are learners who did not return to school because of COVID-19 related issues, because some of the learners in special schools are vulnerable because they've got comorbidities. And KwaZulu-Natal wants to achieve the goal of the grant by ensuring that learners with severe profound disabilities access quality public funded education and support. Next slide. Here we give the summary of expenditure that to service these 11,000 learners with these disabilities. The province was allocated 586,000, and the province overspent in 2020-2021 by 1.3%. As at March 2021, the province has spent 33 million, which is already an over expenditure, making it to be 101.3%. This was caused by the fact that the province spent money on machine, equipment and tools, as well as other assistive devices. Next slide. Here we're showing payment schedules or tranches. In quarter one, we received 9 million, which was 30%. Quarter two, and then we also, quarter two, we received 13 million, which was 42%. And quarter three will be 9 million. And then we haven't received anything for quarter four. And then in the next slide, we're showing projected expenditure, quarter one, and actual expenditure. In quarter one, we were 4 million. We had 4,753. 4 million, and quarter one, the actual was 8 million. And then in quarter four, we're expecting to spend 32 million, but because of the over expenditure of some kind, we will be at 33 million. Next slide. Expenditure per quarter. Quarter one, we have spent, looking at both projected and actual, and quarter two as well, 13, and then quarter three, we're looking at 17, and then quarter four, we're looking at 33. Next slide. Here is the same slide that we have shown here, but now relevant to this one, projected and actual. To say, we can see that in quarter one, quarter two, and quarter three, it does look like the projected and the actual is far lower than the projected. But in quarter four, that will be equal. That is why the line graph on the other side, where the horizontal axis in the Cartesian plane shows you the lines which are far apart now, not like the previous one, which shows that the difference between actual and projected was a bit higher. Next slide. Now, the expenditure percentage per quarter, we're showing 14%, 40%, 54%, and it actually emphasizes the point that we are going to overspend by a margin of 1.3%. Next slide. The accumulative, the expenditure for the second, third, and fourth quarters relate to the outputs as outlined and in the revised grant framework business plan, which includes training and development of transversal, itinerant outreach team members, purchase of PPEs, procurement of assistive devices and learning and teaching support material, monitoring and support of special care centers, and also costs relating to travel and subsistence. Next slide. Here, we actually look at expenditure per key area. For instance, compensation of employees, the allocation is 21 million, and expenditure is a little bit more than that, which is going to which actually leads to 101%. We have training 100%, and the LTSM and assistive devices for learners with disabilities at 100%. So that is expenditure per key area as at 31 March. Next slide. The performance information, the appointment of therapists targeted 36, but we're able to appoint 30. Assistive devices, we're able to get all what we needed. Training of caregivers, we targeted 485, but we had 455. Outreach services, we targeted 1,200 and 778. And outreach services, therapeutic assessment interventions, we targeted what we achieved. And outreach services, admin and cognitive assessment, we targeted, and then we at 0.5%. Next slide. The performance also, we're saying the underperformance of 17% in relation to the appointment as a result of approval. Approval has been granted to advertise all the 5 vacancies. The underperformance of 35%, as shown there, chairperson, was as a result of non-attendance of learners due to the care centers being closed because of COVID-19. The underperformance of 95% was due to the fact that targets were set in anticipation of the assessment tools being available in the second quarter, which was not the case. Instead, tools arrived in February, and the delay of the arrival of assessment tools was due to the closure of the border gates as they were internationally resourced. Next slide. The workstation of teams, we actually have team 1 in Umkhanyakude and King Cetshwayo, I mean servicing those 2 districts, team 2 servicing 2 districts, team 3 servicing 2 districts. So each team, but team 6 and 7 having 1 district. Next slide. In terms of challenges, we're saying that the most parents could not bring back their learners to special care centers in fear of COVID-19. Of course, also the withholding of the fourth quarter tranche by the Department of Basic Education, but we mitigated that because we had advocacy and awareness meetings with affected parents, and the educational psychologists have addressed the parents' concerns, and this has resulted to parents gradually bringing their children back to school, and the Department of Basic Education also queries that resulted in withholding of the fourth tranche were responded to, and the department is now awaiting the release of the funds. Next slide. The other challenge is non-permanency of transversal itinerant outreach teams, and the teams have been employed on permanent basis now. The other challenge was the hiring of 3 social workers instead of 3 educational psychologists, and we are in the process of removing the social workers from the grant and deploying in other areas where their specialization is required. And the low numbers of the learners with the special and profound intellectual disabilities assessment, the 3 educational psychologists are roving among the 12 districts to increase the number of assessed. And then the number of learners assessed. A submission is in place to advertise posts for recruitment of 3 additional education psychologists. Next slide. Chairperson, we rest our case and thank you for giving us an opportunity to account to the committee.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mthembu. I said you must get a glass of water, but the phone was helping you. You couldn't access water. I hope you're well. And for the record, Lubabalo, Honorable Mkiva is not well. We are just praying that he recovers. He couldn't be in this meeting due to ill health, for the record. Honorable members, can we now deliberate on the 2 presentations, Gauteng and KZN? And I'll rely on the Secretariat to help me identify the hands raised through the raise your hand. Yes, Libabalo? You are muted. You are muted, Libabalo.
Oh, sorry, Chairperson. Sorry about that. For now, we have 3 hands, Chairperson.
Yes.
Honorable Ryder.
Okay.
Honorable Dutoit.
Okay.
And Honorable Sazewa, Chairperson.
Okay. Thank you. I think other members will they're still digesting because we only saw the presentation now in the meeting. Honorable Ryder.
Kindly add Honorable Nchabeleng, Chair. He has raised his hand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Ryder, welcome, and I'm sorry that the electricity and the network sabotaged you yesterday. I'm not responsible for that sabotage. You're welcome, but I saw that you joined later yesterday. The platform is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning to you and good morning to the colleagues and the visitors to Parliament today. Thank you very much. Yes, and yesterday at least I was back online from 12 o'clock. So yeah, we had a 3-hour outage, but I'm back and I'm in the saddle, Chair. Thank you. Chair, yeah, I want to appreciate the presentations. I think we have a little bit of a better story to tell today than we had yesterday, and I hope that's not as a result of spin. I hope that's what's really happening on the ground. Now, I'm not a big fan of MEC Lesufi, so I'm going to say to Mr. Masube, well done. But I think to Gauteng, I think that there were some good issues raised there, and I think that you know,
Honorable Ryder, Dennis.
Yeah, Bo?
You are attacking me.
No, I'm not attacking, Chair.
And now you're attacking me. Please don't do that. You know how we do things here. You can't in my presence say you are not a big fan of. You don't have to be a big fan of Honorable Sophie. Don't do that, please.
Oh, fair enough.
Go on.
Okay. Chairperson, but I think that underspending on posts that have been left vacant for COVID is not a bad thing, and I think that deviation is obviously supported. And again, based on what we said yesterday, let's not spend money unnecessarily on salaries. Let's rather focus the spending on the people that ultimately need it and the most vulnerable, because that's what these grants are for. So I think that the acknowledgement of the court case and the steps to fix things was present from Gauteng. 48% spent by the end of Q2 on the grant for people with profound disabilities. Yeah, good performance generally, I think. I do want to make the point again that I made yesterday that 100% expenditure does not equal to 100% delivery. And that's something that we certainly need to monitor going forward. But I think certainly on the profound disabilities grant, the Gauteng department is doing quite well on paper. I hope it's being done equally well on the ground. And I think we need to maybe do some questioning on that. I do want to just point about the AIDS project, where there were also some good numbers put forward, which we appreciate. But of course, you know, when one considers AIDS and the education and the information around that, one can't help but take into account that we actually had quite a alarming story yesterday coming out of Gauteng about the number of teenage pregnancies. Now, you know, whilst one may be a disease and the other may be a blessing, you know, a pregnancy is also as a result of unprotected sex, as is AIDS. And I do think that, you know, we need to perhaps look at the effectiveness of the program, because, you know, clearly if people are having unprotected sex and not taking note of the consequences, be they positive or negative, you know, it may point to the fact that the education program around AIDS and the warnings that are being sounded around AIDS might not be being heard and might not be getting through to the target audience. So, you know, again, we had to talk about the financial aspects, and I think the financial aspects appear to be reasonably sound in this regard. But just a warning to say, you know, are we actually spending money effectively? Are we achieving what we set out to attempt? Then moving on to KwaZulu-Natal, I have less comments there. I did note that there were two slides that were skipped very quickly through on the outcomes. So let me just have a look. Yeah, so if one has a look at the slides that were sent through to us, there was only the one slide that we received on outcomes, performance information. Let me get to it, sorry. Yeah, performance information. We only received the one slide. I did notice that there were 3 or 4 slides that were presented this morning. 2 of them were skipped through very quickly. And yeah, I'd like to revisit those 2 slides, because, you know, I don't want you to dwell for a couple of minutes on a slide showing 100% and 100% plus expenditure, and then where there's slides showing 0% by what I could see as quickly as we passed over them, you know, and we passed over them too quickly. So just those 2 slides on performance outcomes, if we can have a bit more comment on that. And then there was an interesting little comment about the Q4 tranche was held back by the Department of Basic Education. I'd just like to inquire a little bit more from the good doctor and hear the reasons for that withholding of that tranche in Q4. But again, KwaZulu-Natal, I mean, it was a reasonably good picture presented on as a whole, depending, of course, on those other 2 slides. Let's have a look at that. Chair, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ryder. Honorable Tutoit.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I've been partially covered. I would, however, like to find out from the presenters with regards to COVID that will be with us for quite some time. Would I say that the departments are rigged and do have all the necessary plans in place to perform a service that they are supposed to perform in their arena? And then also, it's obvious that there's a fallout of learners that didn't return to school. And obviously, these presentations spoke to learners with disabilities that needs assistance. Is there some kind of safety net to assist those learners, or maybe a part of the program that can speak to assisting those learners and getting them back in the system, if anything in that arena is possible? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Detroit. I understand you're driving. We can understand that you couldn't open your video. Honorable Saziwa, you're next.
Good morning, Honorable Co-Chairpersons. Good morning to all the honorable members, to our MECs and our support staff. I'll just focus on Gauteng's presentation, Chair. Firstly, I would like to appreciate the current rate of the expenditure on the two grants. Because, for instance, one grant, so far the province has projected 42% expenditure, which is commendable in my view. Therefore, it means to me, by the end of the financial year, I think that grant, the province shows some signs that it will indeed, meet the expenditure targets as in terms of what the grant is all about. But however, Chair, I would like to ask the following questions, Chair. Firstly, Chair, I wanted just to check with the province the impact of the HIV AIDS grants insofar as the issue of the sexual education is concerned, whether that has yielded in the reduction of teenage pregnancy in the province because of that awareness created, not only on the side of girl child, but as well as the issue of the boys themselves, knowing that actions that they embark upon are going to lead to a negative impact for the girl child. Just that impact, I think, just to check when comparing it with the previous financial year. The second aspect is on the trainings that the province had projected, targeted. So I want to check whether those were only ones needing, physical presence, given the fact that Gauteng in particular is generally, highly industrialized, even issues of network, unlike our province like Eastern Cape, where there are areas where there's no network. Is it because of those programs needing physical presence only? Whether they were supposed to have used, technology in reaching out in terms of those trainings. Just that, Chair, I think I'll be happy if they can clarify that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Saziwa. Before I give to the co-chairperson, is there any other hand except that of Honorable Nchabeling, the Chair? Lubabalo, is there any other hand?
So far, no, Chairperson.
Okay. Co-chairperson, Chairperson Nchabeling.
Thanks, Co-Chair. And let me appreciate the presentation made by Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. We really appreciate, the presentations. And some weeks ago, just a few days ago, when Gauteng with the MEC, and he moved with us from school to school in our oversight, looking at schools that were vandalized. Thank you very much, MEC, for having been with us. And we understand why some of the targets and the budget wasn't used because of the complications that comes with the changes in the environment. To KwaZulu-Natal, we were in KwaZulu-Natal a week ago, and we visited one school. It's called Golden Steps. And from the presentation of the school management, they were complaining about the therapists that they've been posed vacant posts for therapists for the past 8 years. And this is a school of students, of children who comes from very, very poor families, who are physically and mentally not very well, some of them. It's a school that has children with autism. And you know what it takes to look after children with autism. A little change in the environment can actually go a long way in reversing the gains that we have made. And I just want to check, because you talked about mismatching, where you've got social workers who are deployed where they are not supposed to be, and that will be moving them somewhere else, which is a good thing. But what is happening with this school? Is it the only school that has this problem of not having a therapist? That's my question, Chairperson.
Thanks very much, Chair.
This question was also asked by Honorable Dalmain yesterday. I thought she was going to pick on it again. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, honorable members, for the question. Can I check for the last time if there's another member who want to ask questions or comment before I hit okay? An indication from Lubabolo, there's nothing. Let's start with Gauteng to respond on what has been raised, or comment on what has been raised, or clarify issues that members might have raised. Gauteng.
Thank you so much, Chair. Let me appreciate the input of members. Their guidance and counsel is highly, highly appreciated. And thank you so much. Yeah,
are you driving?
I'm driving, as I've indicated, Chair, that I'll be in another meeting at 11.
Okay, okay.
My apologies, my sincere apologies, Chair.
Okay.
Let me thank Member Chabin and the co-chair appreciating our work. We try hard, it's not easy. We always try hard to ensure that we improve on all these matters. We've taken note of some of the areas that we have highlighted that need our immediate attention. Members, we are indeed doing well halfway. The problem with an institution as huge as education is that there's a lot of movement of staff, movement of educators, change of SGBs, an attitude of district officials, and the lack of oversight sometimes by head office staff. So it's a combination of many things, but I also appreciate that almost halfway we've made this progress. Your question is very relevant. To our intervention, assisting us to eliminate matters of teenage pregnancy, and do they enhance sexual education within the education sector? Take the question that is currently in the public space, the number of learners that are pregnant, I'll be reluctant to say we are winning. It's quite clear that we are making a dent, but that dent is not enough. We need to accelerate this kind of programs. We need to ensure that they are all encompassing and all inclusive in terms of community participation. We must not confine them to schools only. I really believe that we need to broaden them to communities and ensure that we have strong partnership with the NGOs that are participating in this fact. Actually, there was one NGO that was doing very well in recruiting teenagers and advising them on the dangers of
early pregnancy.
Yeah, but that NGO is struggling. And I really believe that we need a way of bringing those kind of issues back in the fold, because this battle is far from over. I don't think that we're okay. In terms of training, yes, we are putting a studio as a province to link it up with our schools and our teacher centers so that we don't rely only on physical training, but we can have visual training. But reality is that the restrictions that we had necessitated that we limit physical meetings like we're doing now on this platform. We try to combine if we can. Actually, I fell in love with the suggestion of KZN when they were presenting that they're using Saturdays and weekends and holidays for some of their training. I think it's something that we can copy from KZN and ensure that we do that as well, because we are really lagging behind with our curriculum, and therefore everyone is rushing to complete the syllabus, and in the process, it's extremely difficult to have workshops or meetings when you have to cover curriculum. But I've taken note of your point. Member to do it, yeah, indeed, COVID is going to be with us for quite some time. I think it's a fact that we need to adjust. We didn't have an experience on how to deal with this virus. Now we have at least almost 2 years. So we can adjust and amend some of our programs. And I share your sentiments in formulating a safety net for learners with special needs, because these are learners that need our immediate attention. And I don't think that we should contribute for them to drop out of education, but also for them to not participate in the economic activities of our country. So we need to ensure that we protect them and give them all the relevant support. I want to leave it there, Chair. Thank you so much. The HOD can conclude on other matters. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, MEC. Is there anything that you want to add, HOD?
Honorable Chair, I think the MEC has broadly covered the issues on the use of technology and related matters. I think we are grateful for the comments. Thanks.
Okay. KZN, responses, clarities?
Thank you. Let me first appreciate the questions which move to the direction of accountability on our side as provinces, which we really appreciate. The 2 slides, in fact, all those slides will show you the good and the bad, where we're still at nil, where we're still at 0. So if when the honourable member looks at them, that will be there. And the issue of the COVID-19, whether we are having plans, yes, there is this something called adjusted risk-adjusted strategy. We have created another level, which is called an extended risk-adjusted strategy, so that we look at these special schools and these learners as forming part of an extended risk-adjusted strategy, where we look at an individual school, the predicaments prevailing there. We also look at each district. In other words, we have taken the DBE concept of a risk-adjusted strategy to try and come out with a clear COVID-19 plan for the special schools. That plan is being developed by the relevant chief directorate. I must be honest to say that we haven't gone that far, because we thought COVID-19 was coming in one wave. And when we got the second and then we're in the third wave now, it keeps us actually moving, trying to have that plan. But the idea is good. The province has started thinking about it. And then also the learners who need assistance to get back to school, we are actually doing something with that. But it's not only in these schools. Even currently, the parents in KwaZulu-Natal are writing letters every day. They want us to close schools. They want us to do this and to do this. anxiety is actually creating some problems, but also in these schools. And we also have the issue of golden steps. And let me first thank the honorable member and all those who were in the team that visited KwaZulu-Natal. Unfortunately, we couldn't, myself and MEC could not be there, but we did get a report that was honest and fair, just an informal report that was honest and fair, and which was characterized by really issues on the ground. The issue of golden steps and the therapies. We did have a plan and a way of trying to fill in these critical posts. But when everything was said and done last year, last financial year, we found that in this financial year, there was this budget cut of 6.1 billion, which actually then meant that we need to go back to the drawing board and try and see what we do. But we are taking the point because this issue of golden steps came to us a day after the committee left KwaZulu-Natal, and we then went to the CFO to say, CFO, in actual fact, although there are budget cuts, let us try and revisit Treasury and see what is it that can be done. I think the issue of the fourth tranche and the reasons why it was not given may come from the DBE. I hope I've covered everything, Chairperson. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Department of Basic Education, is there anything that you want to say on the two presentations?
Chairperson, just before.
Okay.
The answers given by KwaZulu-Natal are not really satisfactory, particularly about the school, because we said that they've been this vacant post for 8 years, and the cuts weren't as bad then like they are now. So you had 8 years of making these things right, you never did it right. I mean, I'll say 7 or 6 years of doing that. The question is why? Because you see, if anyone has gone to those schools and seen the children, you'll definitely understand why they need those people. Because what is happening in that school is the teachers are administering medicine for the children. Not even, like having a nurse, a retired nurse to work there and administer medication, because some of the kids take tablets 3 times a day. And it's the teachers who are supposed to do that. And if a teacher can make a mistake, then the department will be in trouble. I really don't accept this. I mean, unless if there's something wrong with me, I'm failing to understand why it took them more than 8 years, because we're in the 8th year now. So that actually doesn't hold water to me.
I can understand what you're saying, Chairperson. When Umvelas is saying they became aware after the committee has left, and if this matter has been with them for 8 years, and they only became aware after you have left, you made them aware, so it becomes a problem in terms of carrying out responsibilities. And I don't know if the chairperson of the portfolio committee in KZN is on the platform, because they are the ones who must also help us in making sure that on daily basis, day-to-day runnings of the department is being monitored, and make sure that also the department has a monitoring mechanism. But I also want to say to the presentation by Gauteng, at least you didn't just come and complain or identify problems and leave them with us. You have proposed, or you have shown us that you had plans mitigating plans. And that's what we want. If you see that there's a problem, you see a red flag that this is not working, you need to rethink, go back to the drawing table and have a strategy on how best can we resolve the problem. And also the attitude of learning the good practices from other provinces. I really appreciate that spirit, because we are here not for our own jackets or for our own selves. We are here, we are representing the vulnerables, the communities, people who do not have a choice, but can only get the service and expect the best service from the public the public facilities. So we really need to change the way of doing things if they are not working. Mvelasa, do you want to speak to this issue specifically that has been raised by Honorable Chair Nchabeleng?
Yes, Chairperson. I'm trying to unmute here.
We can hear you. Yes,
Chairperson. I think it is a fair concern that this has been there for 8 years, and I think if I can be given opportunity to get back to this in office and try to find out how this has happened and address it, Chairperson. There is no point in actually punctuating what the honourable member has said, except to get into action and see how this thing can be resolved, not only in this school, but in all the special schools. The importance, it's important, and its sensitivity is acknowledged, and may I request to be given opportunity to deal with this matter as urgently as possible.
Okay, before we step out, can I give the MEC Nomusa Ngube to comment on this issue or any other issue that has been raised in as far as KZN is concerned? I know, Madam, you have not raised your hand, but I think you might want to have an interest because you are somehow responsible to make sure that the finances and the plans are done correctly. Is she still on the platform, Babalo?
Yes, I am on the platform, Chair. My apologies. My visuals are not the best of them all. My apologies for that. Yes, I am on the platform. Good morning, Chair. Good morning to all the honourable members. Chair, I think the presentation that was given by Dr. Mthembu is a correct reflection, really, that we understand from the Department of Education, having interacted with them on a number of bases, given the challenges that we have been having in the province. Indeed, the department have been performing very well on those grants previously, but due to COVID and a number of problems related to that and how they've had to really change tune and try and ensure that we prioritize matters that have got to do with COVID. They've had to really scramble and prioritize those matters, particularly related to trying to justify sometimes as to why would you spend the money on this particular, way, as opposed to these other needs. I think that has been one of the challenges that the department has had to face, because as you would have heard, that we are one of those provinces that still have a huge backlog in terms of water and sanitation. And when we were faced with COVID, that was one of the problems. Even now, we still have a large number of learners that are not back at school as we talk, because we are not able to provide proper, water and sanitation sometimes, or we're not able to separate learners because of shortage of clusters. And then you would find, therefore, that even those that we are supposed to be spending other particular grants, we can't spend them because those learners are not back at school. So the presentation that was done by FFC yesterday was a very important one, where sometimes we've got to look at other grants and say, do we still want this grant to be so rigid in a manner that it is, or can we spend this grant so that if we spend it this way, it will also be able to respond to other challenges that we are facing? And that is one of the questions probably that we need to be looking at this committee, because I do believe that it could assist as well moving forward. Chair and honorable members, thanks.
Chairperson.
Yes, Chairperson. Thank you.
The MEC did not respond to the questions that were asked. Intent, she just gave us a brief on how she views things. And she's not responding to the question. The question is, what are they going to do to ensure that that school gets people who can administer medicine to the children who cannot, who have lost their limbs, some of them can't move, and the therapies that need to be there to help them, So that was a simple question, but if she could respond to that, and if there's no answer, they can respond to us in writing, because there will be another request coming their way for explanations of things that were seen on oversight. But I'm not happy with that answer. She's not answering our question.
Okay. Honorable Dube Ncube.
Want me to come in?
Do you want to come in?
Yeah, I can come in, Chair. I'm not answering that question because it's not a question that I can answer. It is. I'm not an MEC of education. I'm answering in matters related to the oversight on finances and how we are supporting the department in dealing with the finances. That's why I'm answering in this fashion, and I'm not going to venture into matters that related to how my colleagues will have to respond to those.
Okay. It's understandable, Honorable MEC. Honorable Chairperson Nchabeling, the MEC is the MEC of Finance. I think she was overall speaking on their role as a provincial treasury or Department of Finance in the province, the support that they're supposed to be giving, the oversight in terms of the financial management or the expenditure. The question that we are raising still stands, but it needs the relevant political head and the HOD. The recommendation or the suggestion that you're coming with, that we expect the Department of KZN Education to speak to this matter, that specifically that has been raised, needs to be done in writing and referred to the committee. But Dr. Mthembu and everyone, as we've been saying all the time and yesterday, these things happen. You know, we're talking about a matter of 8 years. It has been happening because there are no consequence management. It has been there because nobody is being made to account, or relevant actions are being taken against such people who are supposed to take decisions. Because if they were such, they were quickly going to make the department aware that we can't fill in this post because of 1, 2, and 3, or shortage of funds, so that the MEC, through cabinet and their finance committee, the executive finance committee, can speak to the matter. We're talking about a society, a part of the society that is very vulnerable, and such behavior cannot be tolerated. We appropriate money as Appropriations Committee, and we are expected, legally so, to follow up on the money that we allocate to different departments and organs or in institutions, as to whether these monies are used appropriately. Is there value for money? So it's something that we cannot understand, because there's a grant, but there's a problem that has been there for 8 years. So can we get the response in writing in 7 days? I hope, I'm just adding to your suggestion, co-chairperson. Can I hear members, because it should not be as chairpersons, our decision. It should be the committee's, the joint committee's decision. Can I hear members if they support this suggestion that we are putting forward, in as far as the specific matter? Who's there?
And even the fact that the MEC is not here, that is also problematic, Chairperson. You see, because we as the political head, she needs to account. She needs to account. Our responsibility is to hold the executive accountable. Now, if we call people to a meeting to come and account, and they decide to go to their other meetings, what I'll call a small meeting for me in terms of the importance of matters of parliament, when we are sitting like this, taking decisions that are supposed to be helping them, it's really disturbing. It doesn't matter what people will have reasons of not being in meetings. We were in Gauteng. We moved with the MEC from day one until nearly towards the finish. In KwaZulu-Natal, in other provinces, we don't get accompanied by MECs because they don't want to answer questions. They don't want to meet the people that they are supposed to be meeting with, because they can only meet with them when we are there. That is the impression that it creates. This is really disturbing, Chairperson. It's so bad.
I understand. I understand, and I agree with you, Honorable Nchabeling. I didn't want to get emotional today because I was very emotional yesterday. And as Parliament, we feel we are being undermined. We are not being taken serious as Parliament. And if people can undermine Parliament, what more about the portfolio committees in the legislature? So these are the things that we are going to indicate in the report to the relevant authorities. We are really not taking kind of these things. If you can't prioritize issues of parliament, issues of money, the public funds, and clarify us so that we know what we're doing. I don't want to really get emotional, but we're just doing our work, and we want to have you as political head to respect the committees if you don't respect us as members, but respect the institution and come and account. I mean, Honorable Dube Ngube is the MEC for finance. She's here, she was here yesterday. How many other MECs of finance are here? I don't know. What more about the MECs who are responsible for the topic that we are dealing with? So we are not taking kind on the way we are being treated. We are not a priority. Honorable Ryder.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Yes, I agree. There must be accountability. There must be follow-up. But we must do a follow-up, and it must be done in short time, Chairperson. You know, often we threaten to follow up, and then by the time we get to do the follow-up, it's 6 months or 8 months later. So, you know, certainly with Zoom, it makes calling meetings a little bit easier at short notice. So let's do it, Chair. Let's do our job. You know, when it comes time to approving DORA to fund the provinces, you know, I think maybe we must all find another meeting to attend, and then the provinces won't be getting their funds. We'll see how happy they are about that. So absolutely, Chair, accountability is essential, and we can't be ignored. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other member who wants to speak on the matter?
Yeah,
I think Honorable Ryder is saying instead of saying they must write a letter, we must give ourselves specific focus to those troublesome or to those provinces that we feel they are not cooperative enough. Give them their special attention to come and account.
Can I comment, Chair?
Lubabalo, can you help us?
Chair.
Okay.
No, thanks very much, Honorable Chair. I think I just want to comment on the absence of the MECs from other provinces. I think, Chairperson, when you send letters to all of us, we, in as much as we may have had our own planning, but when the NCOP or the National Assembly wants to meet with us, we definitely have to make sure without sending any other persons. That is why you see me as a portfolio committee chairperson always present in your meetings, because I respect that. And I must applaud the Department of Education in Gauteng, because they, even in our portfolio committee in Gauteng, they're always there. The MEC does not send the HOD or DDGs. He is there himself to make sure that the work that's supposed to be done in a meeting like this is done. So my proposal, Chair, will be to agree with Honorable Ryder, but adding to the fact that the MECs that are not here, they must actually not only account only in writing or apologize in writing. They must take responsibility. They must take responsibility, and because you see, if if Parliament or NCOP does not act against the leaders who actually undermine the work of Parliament, I can tell you, you'll have a problem. We have done inter-provincial visits ourselves, Chair. I must also say this. Maybe it will also strengthen the view that there must be accountability to these leaders. Because you see, when we do inter-provincial visits, in more instances, you won't find MECs. You find that the HOD will spend few minutes with you in welcoming you, and then they disappear. Yes, we understand they are all busy, but we would have sent the program in time so that when we arrive there, the political head take full responsibility. You saw when you were in Gauteng, the MEC of Education was with you throughout. Members were there throughout. So it's not a question of sending people to do this work, Chair. It is the political understanding of our work as politicians. But we have come too big for our shoes now. And I think there must be political consequences. You must also write to their premiers. You must also write to their chief whips so that there must be accountability. Because we can't spend a day here. Some of us have shifted things that we needed to do. And my MEC for Finance, we're having a strategic session. I said to her, I won't be with you there. I'll just make my input and go back to the NCOP. She will join us here in the NCOP after she has presented her speech in the strategic session. So these are the issues that we are not elected to be superstars. We are elected to lead and respect the processes. Every year after the elections, Chair, we take an oath that will respect the laws of this country. One of the laws that we must respect is the laws of parliament, the rules of parliament. And so if we leave political leaders and their HODs to do as they wish, unfortunately we won't achieve our objectives as we have said for ourselves at the beginning of the term. So my appeal to you, Chair, together with the technocrats that are working with you and the co-chair, is to write to the premiers of these absent MECs and the HODs so that they can then be able to act against those MECs. It is wrong for them not to be present. And here we are dealing with very sensitive matters, which, if you look at those provinces that are not here, in fact, they are performing badly in terms of addressing the issues that we're dealing with. You heard Gauteng's presentation. There are no complaints or solutions on the table on what is to be done. We expect others to do the same, Chair. But for me, is that they are undermining your authority, they are undermining the authority of Parliament, and there must be consequences. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mpisi. I think we agree on the approach. Can I hear from other members? Do you agree? Don't make speeches, please. We must manage time.
I have my hand.
Who's that? I can't see you, madam.
Oh, it's MEC doing.
Oh, okay. Honorable MEC.
I also had my hand up, Chair.
Okay. Who is the second person?
Hollywood.
Oh, Bosch, thank you. Honorable KZN Dubengube.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I wanted to say that the MEC was part of this meeting in the morning, and he had to leave for other commitments. As we all know that we are having the third wave that has just engulfing the province right now. So he had to leave, and he did indicate that he is leaving, but he was connected, I think probably with the network where he is moving, he got cut off. But I also wanted to indicate to honorable members that as members of the NCOP, all of us that are here, we are also members of the provincial legislatures. And I don't think that there should be any doubt that all of us are accountable. And we are all expected to account to the legislatures and for all the work that we are doing. So sometimes when colleagues are occupied with other matters, it should not be as if colleagues are just decided to just be absent at meetings or are on some other things that are less or more important than the others. I just want to make that point, Chair, because as NCOP members, sometimes we forget that we as NCOP members as well, we are members that are representing provinces here. And we've got to take those matters of the provinces to the NCOP so that the interests of the provinces are represented at the NCOP level. And sometimes, Chair, I fail to understand when we are not able to actually do that. And I just want to make that point, Chair, and emphasize that all of us, when we are sitting as members of the NCOP, whether we are special delegates or permanent delegates, we are members of the provinces and we're representing the interest of provinces here.
Thank you, Honorable Bushielo.
No, but Chairperson, just before Chairperson, just wait a little bit. I'm worried about this response from the MEC. You know.
I wanted us to address it after Honorable Bushielo.
Okay, no, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
It is over condescending to us.
Okay, Honorable Bushielo. Polly.
Honorable Chair, can you hear me now? Or
yeah, we can
somebody
hear you.
muted?
Your video.
The video? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Background. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I'm just appealing to the committee that our intention is not necessarily to undermine the committee or not to undermine the committee. Like yesterday, we were in the whole day, and then we had to go out and come into the meeting. Today, I'm in, but also I'm having a performance appraisal with the Premier. It will depend whether you retain me or not. So I'm going to be out. The meetings at around 12 o'clock. So other colleagues, I've seen them, like MEC for KwaZulu-Natal was here also yesterday. And other colleagues were here yesterday and today. So we respect the committee. We really want your counsel, but also your assistance. So sometimes we might not do as you want us to, but please burden with us. We also have sometimes provincial pressures. And when we do this, we are not doing this to undermine the committee at all, not at all. Will not do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Bushielo. I think there are those MECs which we expected them to be here. They were not here. We were not told. Some did indicate, like yourself, you did indicate your commitments that you'll be in and out. Hence, after from the presentation of Treasury and Education, we see that there are serious issues. And that is why in the morning I requested your HOD to say, please, not the HOD, someone who was leading your delegation to say, please, just try to get MEC Bushielo that, if possible, let her avail herself. But I think, honorable members, we cannot be apologetic about saying what we're saying. And if we feel we are being undermined, and it's not for the first time we say this, and if you feel you as the specific political head, you don't undermine the NCOP, rest assured, you have to relax. But there are those who are undermining us. And we have to say it, we have to hold people accountable. Honorable Dube Ngube, we are very much aware of our responsibilities as NCOP members, permanent members. We are very much aware, and your initial response was correct as the relevant MEC responsible for finance. But the second response that you have just presented, it doesn't sit well with me per se, because from what I get, subject to correction, is that we don't understand what we are doing. We don't understand our mandate. And to me, I have explained yesterday why we called this meeting and where do we derive our mandate from in as far as legal pieces of legislations are concerned. So we are aware that as NCOP permanent members, we represent our provinces, but I cannot focus only in issues that come from Mpumalanga. As a person that comes from Mpumalanga, I have an overall responsibility. Honorable Chairperson Chabeling.
No, Chairperson, I've decided not to say anything because I might say something that I'll regret later. I think we should just move on, and that these matters, like we said yesterday, they need to be elevated to the leader of parliament of government business. And of course, there's an addition from Honorable Mbisi that we need to keep contact with the premiers of these provinces and tell them how dissatisfied we are with the people that they are, that are people who are not, who do not actually take us seriously, who do not understand our mandate and theirs, and now where our mandates differ. I don't want to go into that because I said I'll say something that I'll end up regretting.
No, we are
I'm
clear
not very happy.
Our focus is provinces and municipalities, and we're members of the legislatures. Hence, we have permanent seats in the legislatures chambers. We understand that. Can we step off from this item if there's no other member that wants to speak and go to the next item? The next item is
Apologies, Chair.
yes,
Dr. Mtembu's hand is up.
Velas, we want to give Limpopo, they have got problems and we don't want to lose them. You have heard the MEC that he needs to, she's expected to meet the premier. But yes. It's fine, you can come in.
No, it's just a second, Chairperson, to say the decision that you have taken, we are going to comply. We are going to respond within 7 days. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Honorable MEC Bushielo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Mr. Mtlongo will present for us our HODs. His brother's daughter just passed on, and they are burying her tomorrow. Thank you, Chair. With your permission.
Thank you, MEC. We have received the apology for the HOD.
Thank you. Thank you.
Who's presenting, Mr. Mhlongo? The slide is on the screen.
Chairperson, thank you very much. It's myself and Dr. Pahlele. I'm not sure whether he is in the meeting.
The maximum time is 30 minutes. We want to be able to give the MEC an opportunity to respond to questions from the members before she leaves. Please, maximum, you don't have to do it with, for 30 minutes. If possible, do it below 30 minutes. But the maximum is 30 minutes, time allocated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chairperson, thank you very much. Warm greetings from Limpopo. And thank you, MEC, for allowing us to make this presentation on your behalf. The two conditional grants that we shall be presenting is the Lspid and HIV and AIDS Life Skills Program. Next slide. The purpose of the LPSID grant is to establish and also provide the necessary support and resources and equipment to the identified care centers, and in particular, the schools for the provisioning of education to children with severe to profound intellectual disabilities. The outcome is to improve access to quality basic education for those children with severe to profound intellectual disabilities in conditions that will enable them to secure their dignity and also promote self-reliance, and lastly, to facilitate active participation in their respective communities. Next slide. Chair, with regards to the first quarter of the previous financial year, April through to June 2020, we had a budget of 32.432 million. And during that quarter, we were able to expend only 4,441,000. This was against a projection of 7.155. So there was a variance of 2.7 million. Next slide. The second quarter, July through to September, we had a projection of 6.116 million, out of which 5.662 was expended, and there was a variance of 454,000. The expenditure was beginning to grow during that quarter. The third quarter, October through to December, we had a projection allocation of 12.238 million, out of which only 6.444 million was expended, and there was a variance of 5.794 million. During the fourth quarter, January through to March this year, there was a budget of 8.451 million, and only 1.747 was expended out of a projection of 1.045 million. There was an over expenditure of 702,000. Next slide. This slide speaks to the budget for the current financial year, Chair. We have 32.666 million that is allocated, and 65% of that allocation is approved to take care of composition of employees, wherein we have the project manager and 35 specialists that have been appointed already. During quarter one, the target was 25%, but we could only spend 18.12%. This implies a variance of 6.88%, which was an accrual over the 3 months. The reasons for under expenditure is that there's been changes in conditions of service from contract to 5 months to contract of 6 months, which reduced employee allowance benefits, such as housing and medical. Now, how we're going to mitigate that saving of 6.88% will be used to cover the 1.5% increase in salaries and allowances. The procurement of goods and services worth 12 million, it's at an advanced stage. We are looking forward that anytime this coming September, we should be able to begin to receive the procured goods. The next report is HIV and AIDS Share. In terms of the purpose of the grant or the outcomes of the grant, this has been repeated in the previous presentations. I'm requesting that we move on. During 2020-2021, we were allocated 28.137 million. There was a budget cut during the second quarter, which was 24.16%, and it made us to now have a new allocation, which was 21.339 million. There was a rollover that was coming from the financial year 2019-2020, and that rollover was 1.376 million, which was approved by Treasury, and it was transferred to us during the third quarter. So it brought in a total of 22.715 million. Next slide. That slide, Chair, it's just an indication of how DBE has been transferring funds in tranches to our province, first quarter, second quarter, through to the fourth quarter. 10%, 30%, 40%, 20%. That was the breakdown. Next slide. The quarter one expenditure, out of the 28.137 million, we could only spend 617,000. The reasons are the same, because this is the period that we were on the highest level of the lockdown. As a result, we were not able to do much except beginning to pay the accruals that were coming from the previous financial year. So the closing and reopening of schools during 2020-2021 affected activities that targets learners, school management teams, school-based support teams, and teachers. We normally take advantage of the winter vacations to reach in particular this cohort that I've just mentioned. Next slide. During the second quarter, we were able to expend 1.715 million, which was 8%, and we had 595 and 890,000, which was commitment, which is 3%. We still had a substantial balance from the allocation. Once again, because you will recall, Chair, that schools were reopening in batches, and the timetabling and the differentiated rotational, whether weekly, etc., was making us not to be able to access the beneficiaries as planned. In the main, teachers in particular were now under pressure to be taken through the streamed curriculum, and most importantly, to accelerate the catch-up programs. Next slide. Third quarter, we had an expenditure of 5.832 million, which was 25%, and there was a commitment of 4 million during the same quarter, but we still had an available budget of 12.8. Now, there was another important milestone, Chair, wherein DBE gave provinces an opportunity to amend our business plan, a matter which was done, and in our case, the amended business plan was approved in October in order to make up for the activities that we could not be able to implement during the lockdown levels 5, 4, and 3 in quarters 1 and 2. But still, the time wasn't no longer enough for us to do as much. Next slide. During the fourth quarter, which is the last quarter, we were able to expend 14.136 million. And there was a commitment of 2.657 million. We still had an available budget of 5.9. So, few things to note, Chair. Over the period of the financial year under review, there was a wrong debiting of 2 official salaries who are at the DCS level, but that correction was made during the 4th quarter. We also had 5 posts that could not be filled during the financial year. But we are pleased to report, Chair, that at least by the last month of the financial year, which was March 2021, the recruitment process was completed and we were able to have 3 DCS posts filled because we have 5 district municipalities in the province. For a long time, 3 of them did not have people who were supposed to be coordinating, on an appointment basis. The arrangement was more an ad hoc. Next slide. Now, the reasons for under expenditure, I have already mentioned the issue of we having to be in different lockdowns, which also impacted on the procurement processes. I've mentioned about the salaries of the 2 district-based HIV coordinators, the non-completion of the filling of the 4 new posts. We only managed to fill 3. The 1 CES who could not fill it because even in the current financial year, there's been cut. So that impacted because we are following the grant framework in terms of percentages for different key performance areas. The delay in interviews, one of the things that happened, Chair, was that when different opportunities were provided for us to review their business plans, DBE allowed us to also bring in additional learner support agents who were coming on board specifically to assist over and above the already 180 learner support agents that we had appointed. So they were supposed to resume from August. Unfortunately, the recruitment processes could not allow us. So we lost some time, and that made money that was put aside for that it could not be expended, and it contributed to our overall under expenditure. Next slide. With regards to the current financial year for HIV and AIDS Life Skills Program, our allocation is 26.552. The first tranche was 10%, which means 2.655 million. We have, during the first quarter, April through to June, expended 5.395 million, which is 203% of the first tranche. So the 203% share is coming from the fact that we received 2.655 million as first tranche. And we had a 1 million which was committed during the quarter. That 1 million was specifically because we wanted to take advantage of the winter vacations in order for us to train the cohort that I've just mentioned, to say SMTs, teachers, learners, etc. They were to be trained during the winter vacation this year. Again, the over expenditure that I've just mentioned is inclusive of the 2.363 accrual that was coming from the previous financial year. The rollover that we have applied has been approved, and our expenditure by the end of July, April through to July, is sitting at 24.26%. The planned trainings during July school vacation could not be realized because we're at level 4 restrictions. The mitigation strategies that we are currently using, Chair, number 1, we are continuing with our trainings and advocacies during weekends, targeting teachers, school-based support teams, learner support agents, learners, SMTs. With regards to SGBs, the advocacies, we are conducting them even during the week, but again, following the requirements in terms of the type of venue that we are using. We are also going to continue to purchase the materials for learners so that they can be protected from HIV and AIDS, STIs, TB infections, and of course, these materials are integrated to our COVID-19 pandemic context. We will also continue with our SABC talk shows, which are currently being rolled out. I mentioned, Chair, that we could not appoint the DCSs posts that have now been filled because they could only assume duty from the 1st of May. So the whole of April month, the salaries that was budgeted for that month, we are writing a deviation to DBE and request to utilize the funds for goods and services activities. Now, interventions that we are bringing into this financial year compared to what was happening in the past is that, number one, the department has approved that we can use one service provider who can be able to provide across different services that are required per an activity. For example, if when we do advocacies, you would find that we want to take advantage of the risk-adjusted regulations that will say if it is outside, then we use a tent, then we need sound system, we'll need a stage, we'll need chairs, we'll need catering. In the previous years, the supply chain was approaching this whole thing by providing, say, one service provider who must provide transport, another service provider who must provide catering, another service provider who must provide sound system, etc. Now, if one of them happen not to come and play in terms of providing the service, it was affecting the whole plan. You would not be able to continue to implement as long there is an order for somebody who must transport the people. If it has not been processed, then the whole activity will just fall off. Secondly, our provincial treasury has appointed several travel agents and our department has been allocated one. So that came quite handy in terms of accelerating procurement processes and in particular, the provisioning of services and goods. The appointment of the 3 DCSs that I've mentioned, this it's helping us because we are able to run parallel trainings over weekends, where you would find that in a particular weekend, training will be able to happen in 3, 4, 5 different venues because colleagues are there to be able to run trainings. And lastly, all project managers responsible for conditional grants, not only the 2 are reporting on, Chair, we have MST, we have school nutrition, and also EPWP. There is a monthly meeting where there is accountability before the CFO, looking at what was planned and progress performance, and also in case of where there is underperformance, they have to present the mitigation strategies. We are confident that if nothing hampers us, we continue with the speed that we are beginning to gather moving forward. We should be able to bring in a better performance. And lastly, Chair, we did not include the performance information when we were listening yesterday, and we listened to you quite carefully as you were making remarks to say you needed to see the performance information. We did work on it. Unfortunately, we had thought that we will be able to have access into ourselves sharing. So we were informed that your territory is highly protected. You do not want people just to come through back door. Otherwise, we are committing that we will send it through to yourselves so that you can go through it. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Ntate Mhlongo. MEC, do you want to say something, Ed, or anyone else from your team?
Yes, Chairperson. Chairperson, as Mr. Mhlongo have been saying, we have been here and noted the concerns of the committee and where our weaknesses are. And we are having a strategic plan on Monday and Tuesday, and we'll be able to deal with other issues. The one thing that I'm happy about is that at least we're filling the post. If you have seen the last week newspapers, we're filling the post for the special schools. But also if we can deal with this issue of contract, I think we'll be able to attract capable, but be permanent and stable. We have started with the renovations of our special schools, but from our own budgets. Like Masipumelele, we have bought them new hostels and then connected them with water. Riboni also, we have bought them new mobile hostels, and also the contractor have been appointed, is on site. Retusheng, we have moved to Retusheng from where it was shacks, to a new school which was not used at all, Nuku Primary School. And for Situtulwane also, we have bought some mattress blankets, and I've requested that their living conditions also be improved. So the other thing, Chair, if the grant would allow us, we would want to save more on the traveling and catering and transport and other things, use more internal staff, but be able to intervene in terms of the requirements of our special schools. I think that's where we have not been giving 100% attention, but for now, it's on my radar. That's why I'm able to say where we've started. COVID also came in and disturbed us, but you can see we are trying to move at a faster pace, even using our money, which is not there. Our budget has been recently cut by 2 billion. I'm not even sure whether we're going to be able to still even pay the teachers. But this grant come very handy if it can allow us to do some other things internally, but also be able to improve the general conditions of our learners. Will be very happy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think your plea has landed to the relevant people who can influence, and also Mr. Pillay and the team treasury, you can hear that. The flexibility in terms of the conditions attached to this budget. I've had several participants are requesting that, but I think you will consider that, but also make sure that it's not too flexible to can be abused. Okay, can we step to the next item? MEC Majuba from Pumalang, I hope he's in now. Opal.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let's appreciate that we are invited into this meeting. Let me hasten to state that yesterday I should have come. The challenge was that I didn't get the information in time. Maybe possibly there was a problem of communication in my office, and they were going to...
I'm sorry, my apologies. Can you open your video, please? For the sake of our communications in Parliament, thank you. Yes, you can go.
Is it visible, Chair?
Is it visible? It's your color. Only see something red. I don't know what does that mean.
No, thank you very much. I want to say that I want to apologize to the committee that I couldn't come. It was through a problem of communication, possibly in the office, and I'll have to look into that. I listened attentively as you were speaking, that you were saying that possibly MECs are going to undermine the committee. I want to state that as ourselves, we cannot undermine the committee. It was just a problem that arose, but we have listened to you, and I would like to profusely apologize to the committee and say any challenge that is there will be corrected. But thank you very much, Chair. I'm now going to ask the HOD to give a presentation about the issues which we are accounting on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MEC. Aslusi.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and to Chairpersons and to the honorable members. And thank you to my own MEC for this opportunity to present the province of the Rising Sun and the progress that we are making in terms of the 2 grants, the life skills.
HOD, is your video on?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'll try to get it. You can continue. I can't see your picture, but you can continue, madam.
Yeah, I have an orange duke, so if you see an orange duke, that will be me.
We can see the orange duke and the
yes,
glasses.
Yeah. Then I'm happy to get this opportunity to present to the committee the life skills, HIV and AIDS conditional grant performance and the Lspid conditional grant performance on behalf of the Department of Education in the province of the Rising Sun. In the next slide, Honorable Chairperson, we are indicating the purpose of this presentation, which is indeed to give an overview of the performance of these 2 grants, specifically focusing on 2020-21 and 2021 and 2022, which is the financial year that we are currently in. In slide number 5, we providing an introduction, which I would not really go through in the interest of time. All the colleagues that have gone before me, including yesterday's presentation by both National Treasury and the DBE, spoke to the purpose of this conditional grant. But Chairperson, I came prepared indicating that I want to present this part of the presentation in particular, the life skills, HIV and AIDS, in honor of our colleague, the manager responsible for the grant, who succumbed 2 weeks ago to the current pandemic. So if it wasn't that, she would have been the one that would have been making this presentation. In this conditional grant, the province has been performing very well over a number of years, and we indicating the budgets, we indicating the expenditure since 2019-20, though we know that the focus of this interaction is on 2020-21 and 2021-2022. In 2019-20, we were allocated a budget of 21,909,000, and as at the end of March, we had spent 20,532,000, representing 94% of this. However, we had invoices at hand, and those invoices could not have been paid because of the abruptness that was brought about by the pandemic, and we had to close the institution quickly. But we're happy that we applied for rollover and that was approved. So the grant was fully utilized in that 1920. Similarly, in 2021, which is the focus of this interaction, we were allocated an amount of 15,163,000, which is the revised allocation. And we were able to spend, as at 31st March 2020, 14,387,000, which represent 95%. Similarly, Honorable Chairpersons, even in this year, we had invoices at hand, and we had since requested for rollovers, and we would then, we await a response from our provincial treasury. I will speak to the allocation of 2021-22 in the next slide. In the next slide, slide number 7, we indicating the budget that we have and where we are at the moment. And there were questions yesterday which would also want to respond to in terms of this presentation. Our budget for 2021-22 is 19,530,000, and to date, as at the end of June, we had spent 14,588,000, representing the 75%, and we had indicated, and the DBE presented yesterday, that this high expenditure is as a result of the once-off transfer that we have made to schools for payment of stipends to the learner support agents that we have in our schools. We want to confirm and assure the committees that the department would not overspend on this budget. We will definitely break even as we have a business plan, and we are implementing in terms of the business plan that has been approved by both the Treasury and the Transferring Authority, which is the DBE. But I want to respond, Chairperson, to the 75% in the next slide, that what is it that goes into the 75%, and whether this is in terms of the prescripts that we have. We want to indicate that we had transferred funds to our schools to provide stipends for learner support agents, but we have also done other processes, other activities that leads us to the 75% expenditure. We want to indicate, Chairperson, that the transfers that we have made to our schools, they are in line with the approved business plan and our cash projections that we will spend this amount of money now in the first quarter. But we have learned also from previous processes, particularly last year, where we had our LSA stipends not paid on time. And as such, the department this year transferred all the monies to schools, and the transfers in their nature, I think I need to emphasize that in their nature, transfers are provided in advance. So the funds have been transferred to our schools. However, they are not received by the LSAs in advance. They are received by the LSAs on a monthly basis. And what is it that we have put in place to ensure that the fund can be accounted for, and also that we have controls in place we can account and they are utilized for the purpose intended. All our learner support agents have contracts appointed, and the details of the conditions of service are indicated in these contracts. And at school level, these LSAs receives a stipend at the end of each month, and our schools have monthly payroll submissions that are submitted to the department, including their banking statements that shows that indeed the money has been released to the LSA that is appointed at the correct amount. And we as a department monitor this process monthly. For the past 4 months, we have not recorded any challenge in terms of what is obtaining at school level. We can move to the next slide, where we are indicating our achievements and our targets for the 2020-21. I had indicated that we had spent 95% of the allocated budget as at 31st March, and we have requested rollovers in terms of the invoices that we had not paid at the time of the end of the financial year. The business plan that we had, as Limpopo has indicated, because of the pandemic, had to be revised, and these are the activities that are in the revised business plan. And we want to indicate that as a province, we were able to deliver on the activities in the revised business plan, which was related in the main to responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. We established a provincial task team comprising of 38 members, and they had to be trained on measures for prevention and contamination, prevention, containment, and the management of COVID-19 in our schools, and were able to train all of them. We then had to appoint our learner support agents, 320 of them. This number had to be increased from what we had before COVID, and we had appointed in total 320, and we were able to train these, and we were able to enable them to do both tasks. In the nature of the contract of a learner support agent, they are supporting orphans and vulnerable children, but because of the pandemic, they then had to double up as a resource for the containment of COVID-19. So they had to be trained on the protocols, and they were also supporting in terms of providing screening services at school level. So we trained them and provided them. We also want to indicate to the committee, though it's not the challenge with regards to the delivery of the target that we had set, but we had seen the COVID-19, the impact on these LSAs themselves, because we had then to provide psychosocial counseling to the LSAs themselves and provide additional training for these LSAs to be lay counselors so that they themselves can also support the learners. We then had to train all our school principals on the standard operating procedures that were provided to deal with the containment of COVID-19, and all our school principals were trained. We then provided in 2020-21 material. That IEC there stands for Information, Education, and Communication material. So it's various materials that we had provided to our schools in addressing the pandemic. There are posters, there are other resources that have been provided, including the guidelines for teachers and learners so that they are able to deal with the pandemic. So all the activities as planned were delivered. Only 95% of the invoices could be paid, and the others, the balance, we requested a rollover, and we are awaiting Treasury's response in that area. The next slide indicates that our first quarter 2021-22 targets and what we have achieved to date. In a nutshell, Honorable Chairpersons, I am explaining here what constitutes the 75% expenditure, which includes the stipends of the learner support agents. We had planned for the first quarter to capacitate 252 teachers on comprehensive sexuality education and COVID-19 activities. And we want to indicate, Honorable Chairperson, that we were able to cover 283 teachers, which is exceeding the target that we had set. So we don't have any challenges in that area. We then had to train 378 coordinators on comprehensive sexuality education and care and support programs, and that has not been achieved because of the abrupt closure of our schools, but also the lockdown protocols. Because we're dealing with teachers, most of our activities are happening during school holidays and they are happening during weekends. So that planned support program had to be deferred to the second quarter. And as such, the 378 coordinators were not trained. We had targeted to train 400 teachers on care and support programs. We're able to cover 262 teachers, and the balance would be covered in the second quarter. The 320 learner support agents were able to appoint those, place them in schools, train them to provide the required support to our orphans and vulnerable children, but also to assist schools in containing the spread of COVID-19. So we had delivered in terms of the 320 learner support agents, their training, but also their stipends. Moving to the next slide, still speaking to the first quarter of the 2021-22 financial year, our first quarter target was 540 learners empowered on core curricular activities. In this area of our work, Honorable Chairpersons, we only covered 94 learners. And all these challenges relating to the abrupt closure and the level 4 during that period affected the program. But we have plans as a department to move into the second quarter and ensure that we can deliver on this program, utilizing the weekends and utilizing other means such as virtual means. We had planned for the first quarter 20 advocacy and social mobilization campaigns. We were able to deliver on that, targeting our learners, targeting our teachers and our parents, and we're able to deliver on all the planned activities in this area. We targeted 252 schools for monitoring, and we're only able to monitor 100 schools. We are heightening our monitoring activity in this quarter now, so that the 152 schools that were not covered and were impacted upon had to be, these would then be covered in this second quarter. We then had to procure resource materials, activity books, 945 for 945 schools that are on the CSTL program, and we have been able to start with that process, though we have not delivered directly to the schools, but the processes of procurement has started, and we are awaiting finalization of these different types of materials that must be sent to the 945 schools on the care and support for teaching and learning program. If we could move to the next slide. We thought, Honorable Chairperson, that we should indicate what is the audit outcomes in this area, whether we have been audited. I remember the Honorable Chairperson indicated yesterday if we do have internal audit and we do have audit committees, and do they actually look at these conditional grants yesterday. We want to indicate that indeed our internal audit annually audits the conditional grants, and the reports from the internal audit are considered by our audit committee. Furthermore, we do have the Auditor General that audit us, and the Auditor General focuses on 2 indicators, and we want to indicate that on both indicators, the department has not been found wanting. AG has not raised any findings in terms of these 2 indicators. The department complied with the reporting requirements, and we also had supporting documents submitted to the AG. We can then move to the next slide. And in the next slide, we want to share with the committee also the factors that impact on the implementation of the grant. And what is it that we're doing? What are the proposals that we are putting in place to strengthen implementation? The developments in our schools in the country and also in our province is that issues relating to bullying, issues relating to drug prevalence and drug abuse, issues relating to teenage pregnancy, HIV, and gender-based violence are increasing, and they really need us to focus on. And our interventions, therefore, goes into the collaboration with our school safety program, the Department of Social Development, and the Department of Community Safety, Security, and Liaison in supporting our schools. We also are strengthening collaboration with our partners and the non-governmental organizations for the implementation of GBV programs in our schools. We're heightening our random search and seizure so that once and for all we deal with the matter of drug abuse in our schools, nip this in the bud. So our school safety program, which involves other partners and other departments, is now integrated into this program so that we can deal with these ills in our schools and also in our communities. Monitoring of what is being sold in our tuck shops, what is being sold at the gates of our schools. We have integrated those in our programs, and also the implementation of strategies for combating HIV and also combating the increase in teenage pregnancy. It still is an important aspect, and we believe that through this program, we can ensure the safety of our teachers, the learners, and our school property. So these are new developments, and we are working with partners to ensure that we can deal with these matters. We have seen, due to the COVID pandemic, an increase in the number of orphaned and vulnerable children. We have heightened our referral services, and we will be indicating in the next slide what is it that we, or the number of learners that we were able to refer just in this academic year. But the issue relating to other departments is also critical here. In terms of the references, we're indicating that since the beginning of the 2020 financial year, we were able to refer 55,987 learners to our partners so that these children can be assisted. I would not be speaking. I think I have already touched the issue of addressing bullying and gender-based violence through the Life Skills, HIV, and AIDS Conditional Grant. The next slide, Honorable Chairperson, indicate the partnerships that we have. I've already spoken to a number of government departments that we work with through this conditional grant, but we also want to highlight that we do have partners that are supporting the program in one way or the other, whether it's teacher development, is about monitoring our schools, our learner activities, provisioning of materials, and we have listed all these partners that we are currently working with to improve on the delivery of the Life Skills, HIV, and AIDS program. In my next slide, Chairperson, I'm moving to the next conditional grant, which is the learners with severe to profound intellectual disability. And in this slide, we are indicating the purpose of the grant, which I would not spend time on, as it was presented so clearly yesterday by the colleagues from Treasury DBE, but also my colleagues from other provincial departments. We're moving into the slide that then indicates our budget allocation for the past 3 years, and also indicating how we have spent on this conditional grant. And I want to also respond to a matter that was raised yesterday in terms of the appointment of our teams, professional teams in the respective districts. that indeed we have appointed all of them, and we decided as a province that we would not have them on contract, and as such, all our teams are appointed on a permanent basis, which means then that when the conditional grant ceases, the department will then take over the payment of the salaries of these officials. We are working very hard in terms of planning to ensure that when that happens, we are ready to take them over and be able to pay their salaries. Currently, we're paying them through the conditional grant. So we're showing in 2019-20, we had a budget of 26 million, and we spent, as at the end of the financial year, 24 million, which represents 93% of the conditional grant. And we had an under expenditure of 1.8 million, and we had requested a rollover. We're showing there that the rollover that we had requested and that was granted is 565,000. In 2020-21, we had budget of 29,585,000, and as a department, we were able to spend 28,937,000, which represent 98% of the total of the grant. And we have an amount of 104,000 that was not spent, and we have since requested a rollover from the provincial treasury. And we believe that once that is granted, we will be able to pay the invoices that were at hand at the time. And as such, it means the conditional grant will be fully spent. 2021-22.
We're not doing well with time, Madam.
I'm almost there.
Okay.
Yeah, this financial year, the first quarter, we have spent a total of 39.3% in the first quarter. So I will quickly move. We're indicating there what is it that we have spent on, but I'm showing in this slide our human resources, whether we have appointed them. I've already indicated that they are permanently appointed. We have 23 posts that are filled and only 3 posts are vacant. There are posts, of the 3 posts already, appointments are in process. We advertising the one chief educational therapist in September, but we already have advertised and we're in the process of filling the chief education therapists, which are our occupational therapists. The interviews are currently happening as we speak. In the next slide, Chairperson, we outlining here that it doesn't help to appoint the people and not provide them with the tools of trade. And we indicating the tools of trades that we're able to provide, particularly to our new teams that we appointed last year. The other ones were provided with the tools of trade as they are appointed. On slide number 22, we indicating also the assistive devices that we're able to provide to the individual learners. We do have in the province a target. We're targeted 60 special care centers, but we want to indicate that currently there are 59 that are functioning, but we'll speak later on in terms of the numbers, because we have seen a decline in the number of learners that accessed our special care centers, particularly now during the pandemic. But I want to indicate that we exceeded our target for providing assistive devices, because these devices must respond to a particular learner. Yes, we had targeted 73, but once you go on site, it's more learners that require assistive devices, and 115 were provided with this. I would not be reading each one. What is it that has been provided? In the next slide, Honorable Chairperson, we're showing here our performance for 2020-21, the training of the 25 outreach teams, and we're indicating that 23, that is the 2 posts have been vacant. We're able to train we targeted to train to 20 caregivers, but we're only able to train 135 because of the challenges, as we have indicated, of COVID-19. We also had to train 250 teachers from the 12 special schools that are providing for severe intellectual disability, and 197 teachers were covered. We had to train 20 in-service therapists on early identification and intervention in cerebral palsy and other neurological developmental conditions. And we indicating that we exceeded the target there. 41 were trained. Similarly, with the officials that we were targeting for the district-based support teams, we exceeded the target. We targeted 15, but we were able to do 32. And our special care centers, 60 of them, were able to monitor 57 of those. And the 3 other special care centers did not open because the parents and the caregivers would not bring their children because they were afraid that they might be impacted on or infected by the pandemic. I would move straight to 25 to indicate for the first term, what is it that we have achieved? We have indicated in terms of the budget, we at 39%, and we indicating that we had, we were able to collect the data. Our target is to have this year 1,289 learners, but by the end of the first term, we only had 833. And the reason is because the parents are not bringing the learners back to the centers. As I've indicated, that the pandemic indeed has made a lot of us as parents very afraid that our children can be infected and would better keep them at home. But what we have done to ensure that these kids are not losing out on education, we have development home programs, and these packages have been provided to our parents so that they can at home assist these learners. We provided assistive devices, and we also want to indicate that we also needed to provide PPE materials for our outreach teams because this was inadequate last year when we provided, and we then had to increase on the PPE material, particularly the ones that are specific for this kind of officials and not the generic that we're providing to our teachers, because here we have therapists, they have to lift up the children, put them in their laps and assist them, and we are in the process of increasing the supply of that. We are in the next 2 slides, Honorable Chairperson, highlighting the challenges or the factors that impact on the implementation of the grant in the province and particularly on site, noting that these special care centers are centers that are privately owned, established by our people and supported by the Department of Social Development and also the Department of Education. Some of our colleagues here are not trained for this, but they do have the passion. So we find that there is a challenge relating to lack of financial management, and we are intervening in this space so that we can train our caregivers on financial management and also on good governance. We have indicated that the return of the learners has not been good, so there is high learner absenteeism, and we are collaborating with other departments so that we can really have an integrated approach to special care centers, because we believe that we can increase the number of learners that are coming back into the centers if we work collaboratively with our Department of Health. Currently, we're working with social development, but we want to bring in, including our public works, roads, and transport. That will improve in that area. Challenges of infrastructure, these are in the next slide, slide number 27. There is inadequate infrastructure because some of these special care centers are in shacks, some of them are in garages, some of them are in two-room houses. We're looking at really a possibility of moving some of these learners to our SID schools, particularly if we find that the assessment show that they can be accommodated in these schools. And we also are looking at strengthening access to NSNP and transport. Currently, the nutrition is funded through a subsidy that is provided by social development, but we have noted that the nutrition in these centers is not adequate. And we believe that when the learners move to SID schools, the nutrition that is provided for schools will really fill in that gap. And we believe also as the department in Mpumalanga that as we are discussing the matter of the ECD function shift, the issue of the special care centers, and probably moving them fully into the responsibility of education would also assist. The competence of our caregivers in terms of implementing the learning programs is also wanting. They are not trained as teachers, they are not trained as therapists, but we also are looking at getting young people in the communities that can be trained to really support these mothers. Most of them are mothers in the special care centers, to ensure that these learners can benefit. And we believe that through the EPWP, we can be able to do that. We're not doing that yet, Chairperson, but this is a mechanism that we are exploring, that we can improve the provisioning of stimulation programs in our centers. If we can have a youth program, that will definitely stimulate these learners, and we do that as an EPWP program. Honorable Chairperson, I think I would end here. We're indicating in the slides the partnerships that we're having in terms of government departments and also our disabled persons organizations, the municipalities, and the community policing forums. Honorable Chairpersons, this is the presentation from Education in Mpumalanga, and we want to recommend that the Select Committee notes the performance of the department with regards to the 2 conditional grants that are under discussion today. Inko.
Nkomo, thank you, HOD Moyani. It's 12 o'clock now. We were supposed to be breaking for lunch, but because we want to secure the presence of Honorable MEC from Limpopo, I have consulted with the co-chairperson that we deal with questions from members and responses, maybe until probably we are saying we deal with question and answer session until past. Then we can break for lunch at past. I'm going to request the Secretariat to give me the names of the members who wants to speak. Members, please raise your hands. If you can't, just indicate by calling for the attention of the chairperson, but not while the other member is speaking. Now, Lubabalo.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to all honorable members. Chairperson, so far we have 3 hands. Honorable Ndongeni from the Eastern Cape.
Okay.
Honorable Dwight.
Okay.
Honorable Mbese.
Okay.
Honorable Saziwa.
Okay.
Those are the 4 hands so far, Chairperson.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And another one, Chair, from Honorable Nchabelang, Chair, from the co-chair.
Yeah, that one is given. Honorable Nchabelang, I was going to give him an opportunity to speak after the members.
Thank you, Chairperson. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Honorable Ndongeni, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Mama.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Chair. I just want to know, thanks about the presentations, but I just want to know about the pregnancy test. Teenage pregnancy is a challenge, but I didn't hear in their presentation. Maybe I didn't get it. But if I didn't get it, they can please help me. Can please share with us what they have a plan on that. The second one, it means the sum of provinces have not used their grants is up to 90%. Is the department have any plan to assist? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Dutoit. Thank you, Honorable Ndongeni. Honorable Dutoit.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Chair, I will be brief. I want to find out with regards to the stipends that's being paid out. Maybe I missed it in the presentation, but how many people are receiving the stipends? Number one. Number two, what is the value per stipend that's paid out per month? Because we were supplied with bulk figures. And thirdly, is there a way of monitoring that the people that receive these stipends actually perform their task or duty diligently in such a way that the learners actually benefit from that? That's all from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dutoit. Honorable MPC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Just few questions from my side. On the Limpopo presentations, Chair, I just want to check with them when deviations are done. Are they done from one program to another? Because I heard the presenter saying that they normally ask for Treasury to allow them to deviate. And two is the issue of the travel agents. Why do they have to go to Treasury to request that rather than using their own SCM structures in the department to do that? The third one on the Limpopo, Chair, is the issue of the filling of vacant funded posts, particularly for special schools. How many vacant funded posts exist in those schools, and when are they intending to fill those particular posts, particularly where there is a boarding facility? The last one, I think I'm covered on the stipend issue. In as much as there's a cut of 2 billion rand from their budget, is the department working with the private sector to ensure that there's a greater need and implementation of their program through their relationship with the private sector, who are adopting our schools in different provinces? Chair, on the Mpumalanga, I think the presentation was also clear, but I want to check that the 75% spending on the budget, is it, because I guess now we're still on this, we're now approaching the third quarter of the year. We're not yet there as per the programs that we have. But I think most of the areas are covered, Chair, and I will stop at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mpisi. Honorable Saziwa.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Let me add my voice in welcoming all the presentations made so far. Chair, I've got two questions one from Mpumalanga and one for Limpopo. I may not recall the slide, Chair, but I was struck by a presentation that talked about using of one service provider to supply PPEs, to supply catering, everything. So I want to understand the rationale behind, because our philosophy is that of sharing the little cake that we have, so that whatever we have is going to have a little impact in terms of the economic development in that area. Now, this rationale of using one service provider, what informs what is the rationale, and is not in conflict with our stated, way of ensuring that at least whatever we have benefits at least the majority of those service providers. For Limpopo, I had a confusion on the slide, at this slide 19, if not 18, wherein the province talk about 945 learner support materials, and the target being 945, and the target being met again is 945. But in the area of challenges, they are saying, procurement for learner support material has been made, awaiting delivery. I'm confused there, because they are target of 945, and it was also made 945, but in the challenges, they are saying learner support material, they are not quantifying of the 945. Can they clear that confusion? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Saziwa. Chairperson Nchabeleng.
Thanks, Chairperson. I think the members have asked all the important questions that I thought I would look into. But on Limpopo, I'm worried about the 62.2% of the expenditure on the budget. It's really worrying, given that Limpopo has all these challenges of either being a rural province with lack of resources. But when we're given resources, we find it difficult to use them. I really want a thorough explanation of why this embarrassment of 62.2%, and that this matter of underexpenditure is not new to this administration. I think the present MEC got this underexpenditure in place. It's not, but what I want to check is, what are they doing now to ensure that they spend more than, that they spend according to their plans? Gauteng was the epicenter of the virus, and you'll think that they will be more constrained in terms of implementation than the provinces that were not necessarily that much affected, relatively speaking. And that the explanation of COVID by provinces that were not in the epicenter of the virus really, I find it inexcusable. That it's really hard to swallow that. There was something on Mpumalanga, I think, on expenditure breakdown, where they talk about the assistances, that is, under goods and services, the assistant teachers, what learner support, that their compensation is 418,567. And goods and services amounts to 973,569, which is nearly $1 million. What goes into these goods and services for people who are compensated with 418, but their goods and services amount to nearly $1 million rands? How do we work that? How do you explain that? Can they fly slide 19 for me, please? There's something here, 39.3%. I think it's slide 39, if they could go back to slide 30. Yeah, Mpumalanga, yes.
Okay.
And there's learners, 55,987 learners that were referred to other institutions. For what? What are those institutions? Is it the maternity clinics or what? Or maybe some others? And the others, I actually want to know how many students, learners, girl learners who fell pregnant during the, in the last financial years. Like in Gauteng, I said yesterday that I read that there were 23,000 learners who fell pregnant in school. And I think this thing will go to both provinces. I think it will also go to all the provinces that they should give us those statistics if they have them, and if they don't, then they could do that in writing in the past, within the days that were stipulated by the co-chair earlier. And slide 19, please. Oh yeah, I think that is the last 221. The expenditure at the end of July was at 39.3%. Can we get an explanation? Why is it like that? What are the challenges, and what is the province doing to mitigate against those? Thanks, Chairperson, for now. Chair. Is the chairperson still on the platform?
Sorry, I'm speaking to myself. I was still muted. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm handing over to Limpopo. Sorry about that. Limpopo Province, can you speak to the clarity-seeking questions?
Thank you, Chair. The first question, it's about teenage pregnancy. Chair, I can confirm that within the HIV and AIDS Life Skills Program, which I did not mention that it's working under the Integrated School Health Program umbrella, because within that, we work with Department of Social Development and also Department of Health. They do visit our schools to speak to our girl learners in terms of how they should not allow the either classmates, the boys in schools, or adults outside to engage them in areas of sexuality, which will lead into pregnancy. Yes, since we have been working for the past years, we are working with some of the NGOs. We have seen the coming down of teenage pregnancy. In particular, you might recall, Chair, that in Collins Chabani municipality, we had a huge learner pregnancy that was shaking almost all of us in the province. We are working with Seoul City there, and we are beginning to see the fruits. We can include that in the report that I promised that we will send through, just to provide information of what we are doing fully, and also some of the states that are beginning to come down. With regards to the deviations that we mentioned, a deviation within the HIV and AIDS Life Skills Program cannot be transferred to another grant. It works within that particular grant. If it's deviation within the Lspid, it must be utilized within that grant so that we can be able to account properly. The other question was about the use of the travel agents vis-a-vis the supply chain. Chair, the issue of the travel agents was just meant to enhance the supply chain processes. They are not just working on their own, they have become part of our supply chain so that we can be able to speed up securing of the goods and services. With regards to the use of one service provider, I will have to repeat what I said slowly. Chair, in an activity where we have to conduct an advocacy campaign, you would find that we will need a tent, you would find that we will need catering, you would find that we will need sound system. Obviously, we will also need chairs. Now, what has been happening in the past is that supply chain will call for quotations for a tent, call for quotations for chairs, call for quotations for sound system, call for quotations for catering. What has been happening is that if any of these items I've mentioned, one area there is no response, it will disturb the whole arrangement. It is just specifically for that event to say that for this advocacy campaign, because you need a tent, you need sound system, you need chairs, you need catering, let's involve one service provider who will be able to pull all this together so that it's either the service provider is failing or the service provider is bringing everything together. We have found that to be working. It's helping us to make some strides. Well, Treasury should be here. They can probably say something around it. My colleagues, Dr. Mpahlele will respond to the filling of vacant posts in the special schools in terms of how many, etc., etc. You heard the MEC saying we have already advertised some of them. Dr. Mpahlele? I do not see him.
All right.
Go ahead.
I'm not
Here, Dr. Mpahlele.
Yes, can you see? I just put on my video camera.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think a number of questions were raised. Let me start with the filling of posts. We can indicate that we are using 2 pots of money for staffing. We do have the equitable share and we also have the conditional grants. For the conditional grants, I think all the monies that were allocated for personnel have been used for the 35 specialists and this service, the 35 special schools, especially for the Lspid conditional grants. And then the other posts, I think the question was how many vacant posts at this stage. We can report that all in all, we've got 35 special schools as well as 25 full service schools. The 35 special schools, the posts that are vacant, it's around 300, just over 300, I think around 305. And we'll provide you with specific details about which school has got how many vacant posts. The intention is to prioritize in our discussion when we're trying to plan for the filling of posts, prioritize especially therapists, nurses, and house mothers. This we feel for the Lspid group. These are the skills that we will need for the Lspid learners. The I think we also had questions that deal with the LTSM. I think also a broad question around the under expenditure. The reasons we're given around expenditure, most of which I think relates to the COE, but also deals with the training and orientation, as well as LTSM. It was indicated that in some cases we had planned to appoint before the end of the beginning of the financial year, but the appointments were done in May. Therefore, the salaries of April could not be spent. And then the number of employees are mentioned there. So that money will need to be redirected elsewhere during the course of the year when we review the funds. But also where face-to-face and residential activities were planned, these couldn't be held because of the health protocols, and therefore the funds that were earmarked for those activities therefore were not spent. And these are some of the reasons that I think are advanced in the slides that were presented by Mr. Mshongo for the under expenditure. I'm not sure, let me check if, I think the issue of working with the private sector. Currently, we have a Limpopo Province Education Development Trust that seeks to use the donor funds when we liaise with private sector and companies. And those are the funds that are normally used, especially for infrastructure projects and also obviously curriculum delivery projects. We have, since administration, have been working with the trust to try to have efficient supply chain management processes. For obvious reasons, since the administration, we've been using our own internal processes if we want to secure or procure, even if through the trust, we normally follow our departmental, but currently we are looking at other models, like especially Gauteng, for example, to make sure that we could then liaise with the private sector. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Is the MEC still on the platform? Would you want to say something if she's still there? MEC Bushielo? Lubabalo, is she still on the platform? I think her meeting.
Let me check, Chairperson. No, she's not on the platform anymore, Chairperson.
Okay, it means she left for her meeting. Let's give this opportunity to Mpumalanga.
Thank you, Honorable Chairpersons.
Chairperson, just before Mpumalanga, I think I might have missed something. The 62.2. Maybe I think I lost. If it was answered when my line was down, then it's okay. But if it's not, maybe we could hear what were the reasons.
Mr. Mshongo?
Chair?
Was this question answered? The question
Yes,
for...
it's what Dr. Mpashele was speaking to, Chair.
Okay.
Okay then.
Okay, let's go back to Mpumalanga. Sis Lucy.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I'm going to try my best and be quick, starting with the questions by the co-chairperson relating to COE versus goods and services. We want to indicate, Chairperson, that we are, our coordinator, which I've indicated that has since demised, was paid from the conditional grant. So that compensation of employees, which is 418, is for that salary to that particular official. And the goods and services, which is 973, which we spent in the first quarter, relates to all the training programs that we have done, including the travel and accommodation in the implementation of the grant. The transfer on LSAs went directly to the school, so it reflects as all of the money which was which is 13,280,000 being transferred. But that money, it's part of it goes to the stipends and the work that the care and support, the learning support agents are doing. These learner support agents, we have 320 of them deployed in various schools. You might find that one school has 2 of them, but they don't service one school. They service schools around a particular community, supporting orphans and vulnerable children. So based on the challenges that the children are having, they then refer these to where they can get support, or they themselves assist them. If it's about homework, they're battling in reading, they would do that. But they would then refer them either to social workers, because these learners are battling because they don't have documents. They then assist them to get the documents with the Department of Home Affairs. So the 55,000 learners that we're speaking of having been referred are actually as a result of the work of the learner support agents addressing the challenges of these children and ensuring that they are getting the necessary support. So they receive a stipend of 3,500 Rand per month. So that is the amount that is going to them. And are we monitoring the work of the LSAs? Yes, the school principals are managing that. In each school, we do have a school-based support team that directly supervises the work of the learner support agents. And in terms of the expenditures, I've already indicated that we do have a payroll system that is filled every month. And we also monitor schools directly visiting the schools to see the work of the LSAs, but also to see if the money has been used for the intended purpose. In terms of the matter relating to the 39.3% expenditure in slide 19 from the Honorable Co-Chairperson, the benchmark or the threshold is supposed to be 33% as at July 2021. However, as in Mpumalanga, we already are at 39.3%. And one of the reasons is that, yes, we have done what we're supposed to do, but we also settled in terms of the invoices that we had at hand, which is about, we've indicated here, I think that was 595,000 of the invoices that still needed to be paid. So the invoices have been paid, and as such, the expenditure in this year shows to have been higher. However, we're not underspending in that area. We just above the benchmark, which is supposed to be 33%. In terms of the procurement, the 945, which is a question by Honorable Saziwa, the procurement processes of learning and teaching support materials, it's a process, and we're indicating here that we have targeted 945. And we have already established the needs and the procurement processes for the 945. The resource guides, and I've indicated all those, and I've indicated in the presentation that the process is underway, expected to be delivered in the second quarter. So it's a procurement, but the actual deliveries have not reached the intended beneficiaries. But in terms of what we had planned to do in the first quarter, we have done that, and the delivery happens in the next quarter. The use of one service provider, I know it was intended for both of us, Limpopo and Mpumalanga. We're not utilizing, Honorable Chairperson, one service provider in Mpumalanga. For PPE, we have used various service providers, particularly for this part of the conditional grant, where we are having specialized PPE for the therapists. We have used various service providers, whether it's for the masks or for the other matters. But we do have a coordinating mechanism, which is our program management unit. There was a question from Honorable Mpisi about the 75% of the budget and indicating that, but we are only at the end of June. What is the actual? Honorable Chairperson, 75% is expenditure on the total allocation to the department. Part of that has been transferred to schools. And at the school level, the money that has been paid to the LSAs would then be 33% of what has been transferred to the schools, because we then pay the stipends at the end of each month. But because the money has left the department, it is then reported at 75. But in terms of reaching the beneficiaries, it's not there. The question of how we have been spending 95% all these years, a question from Honorable Ndongeni, but what is it that we're doing as a province to support or for other provinces to learn from us? We do have monthly or quarterly meetings that we have as provinces, and in those meetings we do share best practices. But at the same time, provinces do visit each other to learn from each other. So we provide or we use those opportunities really to learn from each other. Matters relating to pregnancy, they were asked by both Honorable Ndongeni and Honorable Chabeleng. At 2021, the last statistics that we have in the province 1,231 learners that have reported or that have been reported to be pregnant in this in this academic year. But we want to note also that those numbers keep on changing. And at every quarter, we collect these figures from our schools. But our last collection indicate 1,231. In my response to Honorable Nchabeleng, I have responded to the questions that were raised by Honorable Dudoi. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, HOD. Can I check with the MEC if he wants to say something before we break for lunch? MEC Majuba.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Let's appreciate this opportunity. Let me apologize. I was disconnected a bit, I think, because of network. Let's appreciate that the questions were asked, and what we can say is Honorable Coach stated the issue of anxiety, of the problem of the COVID-19 in provinces where you find that there is no too much COVID concentration. What I wanted to say is to say that the anxiety of parents is in all provinces throughout the country, and as a result, it is parents that decide to withdraw their children not to come to these centers, and as such, that affects the expenditure that is taking place. But I would say that when it comes to other issues, Chair, I'm quite happy we have noted all the issues that honorable members have raised, and those that will need our attention, we'll make sure that we take care of them. And we also appreciate this interaction because it builds and also assists us so as we can be able to deal with issues promptly as we account to the NCOP. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable MEC. We are going to break for lunch, and I have left the departments and the members to have enough time to talk to this important topic, so that we are not always in a hurry and have a meeting for compliance and there's no value for money. You will pardon me for those who felt somehow. We have budgeted time per presentation to be 30 minutes maximum, but I allowed you to give us information because that's what we want, and we want to be able to interrogate this information that you are giving to us. It is now 22 1. We are going to have 1 hour break. We'll be back at 22:02. If I'm not mistaken, 2022, we will be back, and the co-chairperson will be leading us in the afternoon session. Treasury, Mr. Pillay, FFC, and PBO. Through you, co-chairperson, I would like these stakeholders to, or these organizations, to speak to the issues that have been on the table today. They had an opportunity to make presentations, and in as far as what we've been discussing, I would want them to have a bite on or a view on what we have been discussing. Honorable members, you can now have a go for lunch. Lunch tables are just on your right. You turn right, then go straight. Visual lunch. A visual lunch. Somebody was saying to me they need a visual lunch.
Yeah, I think that's important, Chair.
Okay, see you then, honorable members.
We come in what time?
Thank you, Chair.
Chair?
2022.
2022.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 1340.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Don't forget to pause your recording, Luba.
Recording stopped.
Dukuvile sisinothando cha bese ngisefonini.
All right, okay.
Sure. Hey, ziyatsho ifoni apha kwi-background. Yo.
Yo.